The news spread from the East Palace to the whole imperial city. Soon, everybody knew that the crown prince's illness that even the imperial physicians were helpless against, was cured by godly Dr. Square's Hongzhong. 1 passed on to 10, 10 passed on to 100 as godly Dr. Square's fame rose to unprecedented heights. In just a short time, everybody in the imperial city knew that not only did Hongzhuang of godly Dr. Square cure the acclaimed, incurable, disease, but had also mastered the long-lost godly art of acupuncture. Many people were ashamed. They had eyes, but they couldn't see MT. Such a great opportunity had been put right in front of them, yet they didn't cherish it, and now they could only regret. Godly Dr. Square was bustling as business flourished. They had already become one of the most distinguished hospitals in the imperial city. Godly Dr. Square. Ji Wenbei looked at the busy workplace, completely stunned. A few days ago, godly Dr. Square didn't have any customers at all. But just as he was worrying over the fact, Ji Wenbei never would have expected that godly Dr. Square would have become so famous in but a few days. And even that wasn't what had astonished Ji Wenbei the most. What had shocked him the most was how, at such a young age, she had mastered the art of acupuncture that had been lost for hundreds of years. As he recalled Bailey Hongzhuang's previous self-confidence as she displayed the words, "Godly Dr. Square," on the plaque, only now did he understand just why she could be so confident. But before, he hadn't believed in her. "Hongzhuang girl, I never thought you were actually this skilled in medicine. It was my eyes that were bad, and couldn't see." Ji Wenbei was somewhat embarrassed as he spoke. When godly Dr. Square had just opened, he had believed that Bailey Hongzhuang was only stirring up trouble, and acted rather rudely to her. Bailey Hongzhuang just waved her hands and smiled. "Big brother Ji, I know my appearance holds no credibility. You were already quite good to me." Hearing her words, the shame in Ji Wenbei's heart dissipated and appreciated Bailey Hongzhuang even more. Now that he saw how successful her godly Dr. Square had become, he was also happy for her. "Big brother Ji, the hospital's business has been very busy lately, and is too much for me alone. Might you possibly have some servants you can recommend me?" Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. After she gets her hands on the money from the reward and bet, Bailey Hongzhuang had already decided to only diagnose and treat 3 patients a day. After all, cultivation was the most important, and money was only to pave her way. With the hospital so busy for the past 2 days, she might as well expand godly Dr. Square some more. She had allocated some omnipotent detoxifying pills and some other pills on the shelves, so she only needs some people to watch over it. There were 2 disciples that used to work under the old doctor. Although their medicinal skills aren't the best, they have no problems with most common illnesses, and are at least better than outsiders. Personality? Bailey Hongzhuang questioned. The staff she gets now would most likely turn out important in the future. If their personalities aren't good, then it isn't a small problem. Ji Wenbei knew of Bailey Hongzhuang's concerns and waved his hands as he said, "Don't worry. I know them quite well, and their personalities aren't mad." Listening to Ji Wenbei, she nodded, "Well then, please call them over tomorrow." Ji Wenbei was a little surprised, "You aren't taking a look?" "With Big Brother Ji's recommendations, I can rest assured." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Whether it was Ji Wenbei or the old doctor, they were all honest people. With those 2, she didn't believe that the disciples' characters could be all that bad. Ji Wenbei is Ji Wenbin. Just as the 2 people were talking, a low, gentle voice rang out, "Hongzhuang lady." Bailey Hongzhuang looked up to see Ning Hong's smiling face. She walked over to him and saluted in a greeting before she asked, "Imperial Physician Ning, how come you came personally?" "Thanks to Hongzhuang lady, the Crown Prince's illness is completely cured." Ning Hong waved and a servant immediately handed Ning Hong a red package. "I came today to give you the reward for curing the prince." Bailey Hongzhuang accepted the package. At first she had wanted to buy a yin yang pouch after she had gotten the money, but she never expected that they'd actually just give it to her directly. The yin-yang pouch. Although it only looked like a small bag on the surface, it contained a much larger space within. Moving around becomes far easier with the help of a yin-yang pouch, but its price also isn't cheap. Ordinary people simply wasn't able to afford them. I also have the 100,000 gold coins from Pang Tangping inside, totaling to 200,000 gold coins. Thank you, Physician Ning. Bailey Hongzhuang said gratefully. At the side, Ji Wenbin looked at the scene emotionally. 200,000 gold coins, this wasn't an amount that one could easily make in their entire lifetime. Hongzhuang lady, His Majesty, the Emperor had appreciated you very much and deliberately sent me here to inquire if you wished to join the Imperial Physicians Institute. Ning Hong said, I promise you, as long as you join the institution, we will never intervene with your matters. Such a talent, if they could recruit her into the institution, then their strength would be improved greatly. Ji Wenbin was startled. Imperial Physicians Institute, who knows how many doctors wished they could enter, but couldn't. With Bailey Honghang's skills, if she enters the institute, her life would become one of wealth and glory. The patients in Godly Doctor Square were both disappointed and envious. When Bailey Hongzhuang leaves for the Imperial Physicians Institute, they would lose her as their doctor. But unexpectedly, Bailey Hongzhuang declined. Many thanks for His Majesty, the Emperor's appreciation and his kindness to invite me, but I don't plan on entering the Imperial Physicians Institute. Ning Hong was startled when he heard her reply, Hongzhuang lady, may I ask why? Inside the palace cannot be compared to the outside, where I can be free and unrestrained. Plus, I still intend on managing Godly Doctor Square. She had no good impression whatsoever of the palace. Whether it was the Emperor, or Xianyuan Huan, they both made her feel disgusted, let alone work under them. Honghang lady, with your skill, working as a doctor here is rather a waste. Ning Hong was clearly reluctant to pass up such a great talent, and continued to try and sway her. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head lightly, Imperial Physician Ning, thank you for valuing me so highly, but I don't want to. My apologies. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's determination, Ning Hong could only sigh, well, if you ever want to join the institute, then feel free to come visit me anytime. Many thanks. After Ning Hong left, Ji Wenbin was puzzled and asked Bailey Hongzhuang, Hongzhuang girl, joining the Imperial Physicians Institute is much better than opening up your own hospital. Why would you decline? Big brother Ji, to tell the truth, opening up this hospital was just a side job. Bailey Hongzhuang answered with a smile. Side job? Ji Wenbin was baffled, then what's your main job? Cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang replied righteously, I am a cultivator. Ji Wenbin's mouth dropped, his eyes turning round as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, not knowing what to say. Ji Wenbin wondered if word was spread out that Bailey Hongzhuang with such amazing medical skills, didn't plan on nurturing it, but instead keeping it as only a side job, just how many people would be shocked. However, cultivation was the common choice in Qingxue continent, so Bailey Hongzhuang's choice was reasonable, and he could only choose to support it. If you want to be a cultivator, laughter then you need to focus on cultivation. Don't hesitate to point all your attention to one activity. Don't worry, I have a sense of proportion. With this sentence, Ji Wenbin seemed to deflate like a ball. He wasn't going to interfere in this any longer. It looks like she has her own plans already. Little Lord, the girl's medicine skills aren't simple. He Mu's face was astonished. At first, he had been suspicious over her skills after the lack of customers, but now, he completely and thoroughly believed in her medical skills. Many doctors were helpless against Xianyuan Huan's illness, yet Bailey Hongzhuang could easily cure it. Then does that mean what she said to the little lord about being able to cure his legs, was true? Bei Chen was as calm as ever. In fact, when she had listed his symptoms, he had already known that Bailey Hongzhuang's skills couldn't be simple. Even the world-famous godly doctor's first analysis was rather lacking compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's. "Little Lord, will we be asking Bailey Hongzhuang to diagnose and treat your leg?" He Mu couldn't help but ask. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang could really cure his little lord's legs, then whatever reward she wants, she'll get. Bei Chen just waved his hands, "There's no rush." He had been already waiting for so long and didn't mind waiting some more. But what was suspicious, was Bailey Hongzhuang's sudden rise to power. It was strange, too strange. With how Xianyuan Huan treated Bailey Hongzhuang, it'd be reasonable to say that Bailey Hongzhuang was the one who had poisoned him initially and then just cured Xianyuan Huan now. A smile that held a trace laughter bloomed on his lips as he thought about Xianyuan Huan. With their relationship, there was no way Bailey Hongzhuang would have any good intentions to him. Like this, there is only one answer: Xianyuan Huan's illness was caused by her. Not only did this scheme bring her godly Dr. Square money and fame, it even got Xianyuan Huan to lower his head and apologize to her. This was truly what was called killing 3 birds with 1 stone. How cost-effective, ah! Bei Chen felt that this woman was becoming more and more interesting. She was intelligent and wise, cunning yet not treacherous, ruthless, but not emotionless, destined to become her own individual. 3 days later, East Palace. Xianyuan Huan was fully recovered, his pain completely gone. He felt as if he was reborn, the comfortable feeling was simply indescribable. A white, fairy-like figure couldn't help but emerge in his mind, and Xianyuan Huan quickly pulled over a maid to ask, "While I was in my coma, did a girl in white feed me medicine?" "Reporting to your Royal Highness, that would be the one who had cured you, Lady Hongzhuang." The maid obediently answered. Knowing she was real, Xianyuan Huan's eyes lit up with joy. "Which Lady Hongzhuang?" "Godly Dr. Square's doctor, Lady Hongzhuang." "Hongzhuang." Xianyuan Huan was a little startled as the misty figure in his mind started to clear up, finally revealing her face. So, it was actually the girl he had met on that day in the streets, Hongzhuang. I say, Hongzhuang had probably fallen in love with me, and my handsome, romantic, charming, suave aura. Xianyuan Huan smiled self-satisfiedly. He firmly believed that Hongzhuang couldn't have written those words on Song Ji's back. After all, she loved him so much, so how could she possibly bear to slander him? "Come, arrange a sedan chair for me. I'm leaving the palace." Xianyuan Huan laughed in his heart, "Beauty, just wait for me to catch you." As Bailey Hongzhuang continued to treat and diagnose various patients, her title of "godly doctor" was heard far and wide. As long as somebody entered, no matter the condition, they would leave completely healthy. Even the rare and supposedly incurable diseases were easily dealt with by her. In just a short frame of time, the name, Godly Dr. Square, grew even more distinguished. The patients diagnosed and treated by Bailey Hongzhuang advertised for her, singing praises of her miraculous skills. Its reputation gradually grew and spread to the cities outside the imperial capital. Godly Dr. Square was soon flocked by an endless stream of patients from even other cities. At the same time, the 2 servants recommended by Ji Wenbin also arrived at Godly Dr. Square to work. After the old doctor had retired, Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu had struggled to make ends meet. With their skill, they were too weak to open up a hospital, nor would it be easy for them to find a new master. Since the old doctor was gone, they stayed in their homes, worrying until Ji Wenbin found them. When the 2 heard that they were going to work at Godly Dr. Square, it was as if somebody had thrown a pie at their faces. They were shocked speechless for almost half a day, excitement coursing through their bodies. Only when they actually entered Godly Dr. Square, could they believe that they were actually working at Godly Dr. Square. Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu treasured this stroke of good fortune very much and worked diligently, making Bailey Hongzhuang very satisfied. Godly Dr. Square's reputation was resounding, and naturally reached the general's household. The anxiety present on Bailey Yuyan's face turned into hope. Since Hongzhuang could treat so many people, then wouldn't she also be able to restore her fair skin? Yu Yan, that godly Dr. Square only sees up to 10 patients a day. Mother paid a high price to snatch a spot, you must at least go and look. Su Wanjing clutched Bailey Yuyan's hands tightly. The current Bailey Yuyan was very different from the beautiful, glamorous Bailey Yuyan. Her scars marred her entire body due to her own uncontrollable scratching, disfiguring even her own face. After those days, Bailey Yuyan's willpower crumbled and has always been depressed ever since. Now that Su Wanjing had seized this opportunity with great difficulty, she could only hope that this godly doctor could live up to her expectations, and was really able to cure Bailey Yuyan. Hearing her words, a ray of excitement flashed in Bailey Yuyan's dull eyes. Mother, is this true? Did you really get me a spot? When the godly doctor's reputation was first spread, the people bidding to enter the quota were too many. Su Wanjing bided her time and didn't act, waiting until today to take action. Su Wanjing nodded with a smile on her face. You are mother's treasured daughter, of course I would care about you. Thank you, mother. Bailey Yuyan's voice was full of excitement. As a female, the most important thing was her appearance. These days, even she herself couldn't stand it, so how could His Highness, the Crown Prince, stand her appearance? Once her looks were restored, she could return to His Highness, the Crown Prince's side, and perhaps even become his imperial concubine in the future. As she thought, the smile on Bailey Yuyan's face grew even brighter. She was confident that she could recover. Lady Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had just finished diagnosing and treating the 9th patient when a familiar voice that always managed to disgust her without fail, rang out in godly Dr. Square. Quickly, look. His Highness, the Crown Prince is here. His Highness, the Crown Prince was actually healed. It was lucky that Lady Hongzhuang was there, otherwise he would have already become a vengeful ghost. I think the Crown Prince is here to thank her. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang only diagnosed and treated a maximum of 10 patients per day, godly Dr. Square was still very lively. Who knew how many people stood in the line alone? Many people didn't even come for a reason, and just wanted to wander around the hospital, so when Shenyuan Huan arrived, he was instantly recognized by everybody. Crown Prince. A polite expression sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. But this time, it was a little less friendly, and just a tiny bit more cold. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang stand in front of him, Shenyuan Huan's heart couldn't help but quiver. Bailey Hongzhuang was like a graceful, azure lotus, a fresh and bright hibiscus. He wanted her. Her loose white skirt fluttered in the wind. This Hongzhuang looked just like the fairy in his dreams. Shenyuan Huan restrained his excitement and walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Lady Hongzhuang, you're my savior. Calling me Crown Prince is too formal. Oh, really? Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow quizzically at Shenyuan Huan. Shenyuan Huan smiled brilliantly. Just call me by my name. That's not very good. Bailey Hongzhuang's face displayed a difficult expression, but in her heart, she really wanted to just kick this hypocritical man's face into the clouds. What's wrong? If I say so, then of course it's okay. Shenyuan Huan stressed the fact. Bailey Hongzhuang hesitated a little before nodding. Well, okay. Hongzhuang, you saved me. If it wasn't for you, then I would have been forced to rely on those useless old doctors and be dead by now. Shenyuan Huan laughed. Seeing Shenyuan Huan act so suave as he said Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but give him a dirty look. It looks like this guy's skin has gotten even thicker after returning from death's gates. The elders in the institution are very capable. I just so happened to see a disease similar to yours before. Shenyuan Huan didn't continue the conversation and turned to face godly Dr. Square. Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu were both extremely busy as they juggled their tasks. Godly Dr. Square's business was intense and swamped. Lady Hongzhuang, you're running this godly Dr. Square all alone. Isn't it hard? Xianyuan Huan asked tentatively. He was ready before he had come to Godly Doctor's Square. Today, he'll make Hongzhuang one of his women. He firmly believed that as long as he proposed the idea, Hongzhuang would definitely jump into his arms without hesitation. He was, after all, under one and above thousands, the crown prince, Xianyuan Huan. It's okay. Bailey Hongzhuang said lightly. Little White, did you see how this guy looks at Master? Little Black asked. Bailey Hongzhuang was already sick of Xianyuan Huan and didn't continue to play with him. At the moment, she was pretending to be busy with some things, giving off a clear signal to Xianyuan Huan to leave. But she never thought he wouldn't be able to realize it, instead just following her room to room. Where Bailey Hongzhuang went, he followed. I saw. Little White nodded in approval. I wonder what kind of face Xianyuan Huan will have once he finds out that Hongzhuang is actually Bailey Hongzhuang. Ahaha. I'm so looking forward to it. Xianyuan Huan also got bored of playing along with her, and his footsteps fell to a stop. Hongzhuang, do you want to become my woman? Without giving a chance for Bailey Hongzhuang to answer, he continued arrogantly, if you become my woman, I guarantee the rest of your life will be filled with riches and glory forever. You won't have to do such difficult things ever again. From your devotion when you saved me, I understand your feelings. You can rest assured, I will definitely treat you well. Xianyuan Huan's face was infatuated. The words he spoke was enough to move even Xianyuan Huan himself. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrow, looking at Xianyuan Huan as if she was looking at someone dead, her lips slowly curving to reveal a playful smile. But Xianyuan Huan, I've heard that the one you loved most was Bailey Yuyan, the general household's eldest miss. She still deeply remembered the first day she came here, how Xianyuan Huan had shown off his love with Bailey Yuyan right in front of her. Really an eye for an eye, she had never thought that this would happen again. Only this time, she was in Bailey Yuyan's position. The irony. Hongzhuang, how could Bailey Yuyan compare to you in my heart? I was only a little interested in her, you are my true love. Xianyuan Huan didn't hesitate to answer, his voice utterly sincere and natural as if he was pouring his heart out, easily making people believe in him. Your Highness, Crown Prince, you, a delicate, trembling voice echoed with distress suddenly rang out, as Bailey Yuyan looked at the present scene painfully. How could you do this to me? She had never thought that the prince in her heart would say that to other women, not even sparing 1 cent for her feelings. So all along, was she only a little puppet he was interested in? Xianyuan Huan never thought that Bailey Yuyan would be present, but when he saw her appearance that was simply too ugly to be called ugly, his eyes were filled with hate and disgust. Do this to you? You and I were never anything from the start. Xianyuan Huan was completely merciless. The distance between Bailey Yuyan and Hongzhuang was like heaven and earth. Of course he wouldn't let Bailey Yuyan make Hongzhuang unhappy. Bailey Hongzhuang sneered as she watched the play in front of her. They were better than she'd imagined them to be. Crown Prince, didn't you say the one you loved most was me? Bailey Yuyan accused tearfully as she hastily walked to Xianyuan Huan, reaching to grab his hand. Xianyuan Huan instantly retreated back 2 steps, his eyes filled with repulsion as he looked at her. What nonsense are you speaking? With your hideous looks and monster-like body, do you really think that I'd love you? With a single motion, Xianyuan Huan's right hand ripped open Bailey Yuyan's veil, revealing her face strewn with scars to the crowd. Wah! Everybody fell into an uproar, and many even started to curse. After examining her carefully, the people finally concluded that this woman, whose ugliness simply couldn't be described enough in the word ugly, was actually Bailey Yuyan. Look, how did Bailey Yuyan's appearance turn out like this? I don't know, but with such a disgusting face, it's no wonder the crown prince doesn't want her. Growing up to be so ugly doesn't only scare men, it's even scary enough to quiet a crying baby. Bailey Yuyan quickly picked up the veil, but looking at the faces full of disgust and repugnance, her heart couldn't help but quiver. Not so long ago, she was the beauty praised by all. But now, people were associating her with words like hideous, ugly, disgusting, and monster. This is Bailey Yuyan. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes displayed surprise, but deep within her ink-black pupils, it flickered with an icy light. The pain Bailey Yuyan is experiencing currently, was only 1/100th of the pain Bailey Hongzhuang had felt. Now, she'll let Bailey Yuyan have a taste of humiliation. After all, it truly was just a taste compared to the scorn Bailey Hongzhuang had to suffer through for 15 whole years. Xianyuan Huan nodded. Hongzhuang, now you believe me, right? With her looks, why would I love her? Anger rose on Bailey Yuyan's face, and she charged at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her. You vixen. I'll kill you. Sudden surges of power exploded outwards. Bailey Yuyan's face looked almost insane. She must kill this Hongzhuang. She absolutely will not allow anybody to steal her crown prince. You could only see Bailey Yuan's palm strike out abruptly, creating swift gusts of wind and explosive sounds in the process. No doubt, this was the power of a late-stage heavenly earth cultivator. Bailey Hongzhuang fixed her eyes on Bailey Yuyan, her lips widening into a provoking smile in which nobody but her could see. You madwoman, how could you act so wild here? Xianyuan Huan acted even faster than Bailey Yuyan, and before her palm strike could even touch Bailey Hongzhuang, his punch had already landed maliciously in Bailey Yuyan's stomach. Bang! A bang sound rang out, and Bailey Yuyan's body flew into the air, landing heavily on the ground. Hongzhuang, are you alright? Xianyuan Huan didn't bother to even take a quick glance at Bailey Yuyan's condition, and just quickly asked Bailey Hongzhuang, his voice concerned. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Thank you. Hearing her words, Xianyuan Huan smiled brilliantly. It was nothing. You vixen, the crown prince is mine. I've been with him for more than a year. Bailey Yuyan shouted frantically, how could you be so despicable? The onlookers watched this scene with great interest. Everybody knew that Bailey Yuyan and Xianyuan Huan were a couple. Currently, Bailey Yuyan was calling Bailey Hongzhuang a vixen. Does that mean Bailey Hongzhuang liked the crown prince as well? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Lady Bailey's words are truly funny. If you say I'm despicable, then aren't you despicable yourself? What do you mean by that? As we all know, Xianyuan Huan was the general household's Lady Bailey Hongzhuang's fiancée. You are Bailey Hongzhuang's older sister, but you've actually seduced her fiancé. If this isn't despicable, then what is? The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth rippled with enchanting laughter, but the words that came out were of obvious aggression. This was the accumulated hatred Bailey Hongzhuang had to suffer under. Even though Xianyuan Huan didn't have an inkling of feelings towards her, the previous Bailey Hongzhuang had truly loved him. This elder sister whom she trusted most had actually stolen the man she loved the most, and had even orchestrated her death, carving out such a passionate drama in front of her. Since Bailey Yuyan did such a thing, she should have thought of the consequences. In front of such remarks, Bailey Yuyan's face instantly turned pale. Although she did steal Xianyuan Huan from Bailey Hongzhuang, the incident was never exposed. Now that it's been revealed under broad daylight, everybody would regard her actions with contempt. How could she act then? His Highness, the Crown Prince and Bailey Hongzhuang's engagement had already been annulled, so how could I have seduced him away? Bailey Yuyan was unwilling to back down. She cannot not let all her reputation be destroyed today in this one moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's perfect, exquisite face was full of undisguised mockery. If you don't know, then I also don't know. The Crown Prince and Bailey Hongzhuang's engagement has only been annulled a bit less than a month ago, but weren't you just clearly shouting you two were together for more than a year? Her voice was mild, but held an apathetic indifference. Her irrefutable response was like steel, making it impossible for Bailey Yuyan to rebuttal with anything else. Bailey Yuyan's mouth twitched. She wanted to explain, but couldn't say a word. When everybody saw this scene, they instantly knew the truth. They all recalled her usual, goddess-like image and reputation. None of them thought that the real her was so unbearable. Even if everybody thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and her trash cultivation physique wasn't worthy of Xianyuan Huan, she was still Bailey Yuyan's sister. For her to just casually steal her own sister's fiancé without any guilt, it was simply too immoral. I never thought that Bailey Yuyan would be such a person. She used to even be my idol, disgusting. Bailey Hongzhuang, so pitiful, to have such a sister. Knowing one's face, but not one's heart. Many people shook their heads, sighing. Bailey Yuyan received her karma, and who could she blame but herself? Under the judging eyes of so many people, Bailey Yuyan no longer had the guts to stay. Wearing her veil, she ran away. But in comparison, Xianyuan Huan wasn't the least bit scared. After all, he was the crown prince. Who dared to say even half a word about him? Besides, let alone a crown prince, even an ordinary man would often have 3 wives and 4 concubines. In the future, he would have 3,000 beauties in the palace. This was nothing at all. Hongzhuang, are you willing to become my woman? Xianyuan Huan leaned forward and asked in anticipation. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold as she smiled lightly. Many thanks for Prince's good intentions, but I still think it's better for me to work in godly Dr. Square. You dare to reject me? Xianyuan Huan was shocked. Nobody ever dared to reject him before. Why wouldn't I dare? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Xianyuan Huan's smug face was what she disgusted the most. You know that I'm the crown prince. Daring to reject me, do you want to die? Xianyuan Huan raised his voice. Being rejected by Bailey Hongzhuang in front of such a big crowd, where would his face go? So are you saying, Prince is threatening me? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her willow-like eyebrows. Her beautiful, clear, elegant face showed no traces of fear, but was instead cool and confident, as if she had already known that Xianyuan Huan didn't dare to do so. Xianyuan Huan's face was hesitant. Hongzhuang not only saved his life, but was also very much appreciated by his royal father, the emperor. If he were to forcibly seize Hongzhuang today, then it's probable that he could lose the emperor's favor. That absolutely cannot happen. Suddenly, Xianyuan Huan realized that he truly at his wits' end with Bailey Hongzhuang. Since that day, Bailey Hongzhuang had enjoyed a peaceful life for a month. Godly Dr. Square's business didn't falter with time, but had even grown more and more popular, causing the neighboring inn to always be full and busy. This was all thanks to Godly Dr. Square's customers. Not only the inn, but even all the surrounding workplaces had grown in popularity, and were all very thankful to Bailey Hongzhuang. Godly Dr. Square's prices grew higher and higher, but the rich kept flocking to her like sheep, just as before. It seems like they believed that only by paying a big sum would their illnesses be cured. This was also a method deployed by Bailey Hongzhuang. Not only did the prices increase, but she had also reduced the patients she'd see from 10 people to 3 a day. Thus, the competition was even more fierce, and many grand officials fought to snatch a place in the quota. Those who gained the right to see the doctor were all very proud. Others couldn't snatch it, but they could. This could only prove that they were stronger than others. Like this, the time Bailey Hongzhuang had to stay in Godly Dr. Square lessened, but the profits she earned only increased. With enough cultivating resources, coupled together with her prior knowledge on cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang's speed was incomparable. On this day, news was suddenly released from the imperial palace. In 3 days, the imperial palace would host an evening banquet with the emperor in the garden, and each official must bring at least 1 female family member. Although it wasn't obvious, anybody with an eye for detail would know that the emperor is holding a drafting feast for the crown prince. Xian Yuanhuan only had a single concubine, and still didn't have a main wife. The crown prince's previous engagement had already been abolished, so naturally, it needed to choose a new one. At once, all the ministers and officials rolled up their sleeves for battle and began to prepare. As long as their own daughter or blood relative was chosen to become the crown prince's main wife, their own positions would definitely rise up like a phoenix flying to a branch. Perhaps in the future, they might even become the nation's mother. The emperor released an edict: all court ministers and officials must come with any unmarried daughters to attend the evening banquet, and Bailey Hongzhuang was naturally included. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard the news, her eyes couldn't help but flash with interest. The crown prince was choosing a main wife, and if she, the abandoned waste, goes, then wouldn't she be ridiculed by everybody? She really didn't know what this emperor was thinking. It's not like it would matter if she saw the crown prince selecting a new wife. "Master, will you be attending the evening banquet?" Even as Little Black's mouth excitedly munched on the snack, he didn't forget to ask Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang sipped the tea, her exquisite and elegant face revealing a faint, graceful smile. "Since it's been ordered everybody must go, then naturally I am too. Won't you be laughed at?" Little Black's face was bitter. He really didn't want to see his master ridiculed. The status of the crown prince's abandoned wife was just too embarrassing. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened, her face proud but playful. "If I'm going to be laughed at, then wouldn't Bailey Yuyan's situation be much more interesting?" Everybody already knew in their hearts that she would be abandoned by the crown prince. From the second she was declared trash, she was destined to never become the crown prince's main wife. But Bailey Yuyan actually seduced him deliberately, but was still tossed away and abandoned by the crown prince. This was far more embarrassing than her own situation. Besides, I don't plan to go with the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang. Her pupils, black like ink, glittered with brilliance. Time for her to reveal her true appearance. Little Black and Little White were both startled, their limpid water-like eyes rippling with pleasant surprise. After waiting for so long, it was finally time for Master to show her true colors. "Very good." Bailey Hongzhuang's smiling face was bright and beautiful as she folded her hands. "Former Bailey Hongzhuang, all the humiliation and regrets you've had to bear, I'll help you give back, one by one. I will make everybody learn that you are not trash." Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's indifference, Bailey Yuyan wanted to die right then and there. Right now, she didn't even want to go outside to see another person, let alone attend the evening banquet just to watch the crown prince pick out a main wife. Since the trouble that day in Godly Doctor Square, she had become the gossip everybody discussed. Even her own father's attitude wasn't as good to her as before. Not only that, but the same mother that told her to go there seemed to have completely vanished, not a single trace left behind. This life, she was finished. If the crown prince didn't want her, then she's afraid that nobody would dare to marry her again. Those magnificent days as a proud woman, yet now she had fallen into this state. She hadn't wanted to go outside to see another until after she had faded from everybody's memory. She never thought that a drafting feast would destroy her plans. She must go, yet she cannot go. Her heart was just simply too tired. 3 days' time flashed away. The moon glimmered at the willow tree's tip, cool winds like water. The daughters of officials and ministers were all carefully dressing up and preparing themselves to attend the evening banquet. The general's household was quiet. Bailey Jintao's face was gloomy. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't have a choice, he really didn't want to go to the drafting feast. His 2 daughters both had a relationship with His Highness, the Crown Prince. Before Bailey Hongzhuang's engagement was annulled, he had already planned to make Bailey Yuyan marry His Highness, the Crown Prince. But he never thought that His Highness, the Crown Prince, would actually humiliate Yuyan in a crowd. Speaking of it, although this matter was indeed Yuyan's responsibility, after His Highness, the Crown Prince, shamed her appearance, he's afraid that nobody would ever want to marry her in the future. After that, he simply held no goodwill at all towards the Crown Prince. That scoundrel's mind was always too horny to think clearly, and didn't even give his identity any face, playing him, Bailey Jintao, as a joke. "Father, can I not go?" Bailey Yuyan whispered, testing the waters. If she went today, it'd be tantamount to inviting her own disgrace. She'd be ridiculed and mocked by everybody. Hearing her words, Bailey Jintao's face became even more gloomy. An imperial edict cannot be violated. "Do you want to die?" Bailey Yuyan's eyes dimmed. It seems like getting laughed at today was inevitable. Su Wanjing's face revealed a hint of worry. She had always protected Bailey Yuyan since she was a baby, and now seeing Yuyan so unhappy, Su Wanjing's heart ached. "Lord, Yuyan is so pitiful. Why must you be so unkind? If it wasn't for you carelessly using every possible way to get close with the Crown Prince, how would we fallen like this?" Bailey Jintao couldn't restrain his anger. He had rushed headlong into the battlefield for many years, commending only respect, and had never been a joke. But now, because of his two daughters, he almost didn't dare to see another person anymore. Seeing Bailey Jintao explode, Su Wanjing's face couldn't help but immediately turn pale. Previously, she was overshadowed by Qin Yayan. Now, is her daughter, Bailey Yuyan, going to be overshadowed by Bailey Hongzhuang? But in the wake of Bailey Jintao's anger, she didn't dare to speak a word. "Father, don't be angry. When the royal hunting banquet begins, I will definitely make you proud." Bailey Haoxuan's elegant face was set in a serious expression. He definitely won't let others look down on the general's household. Bailey Haoxuan is Bailey Yuyan's blood-related brother. He was a year younger than her, and also the one the general favored the most. Earlier, he had gone out training with his master, and hadn't come back until today. Seeing Bailey Haoxuan's earnest appearance, a gratified color returned to Bailey Jintao's eyes. That's right, even though Bailey Yuyan had disappointed him, Bailey Haoxuan had never let him down. At the young age of 14, he had already achieved the intermediate stage of mysterious Earth Realm, and wasn't far away from reaching late stage. Compared to Bailey Yuyan's, Bailey Haoxuan's talent was even better. So as long as Bailey Haoxuan put on a good show at the royal hunting banquet, then the humiliation they endured now would be nothing. After all, what Xingxue continent regarded the most, was strength. "It's still you who's the smartest." Bailey Jintao's gloomy face relaxed a little, and patted Bailey Haoxuan's shoulder with a slight smile. Bailey Haoxuan's eyes suddenly smiled, his eyes sparkling as he said, "Father, what about Bailey Hongzhuang? Are we going to the palace with her, together?" Hearing him mention Bailey Hongzhuang, disgust welled up in Bailey Jintao's eyes. As long as anyone so mentioned that girl, his mood would always turn terrible. "No need." Bailey Jintao's voice was slightly cold. "We'll enter the palace alone in a little while, then we'll prepare a sedan chair for her to go herself." "Okay, I'll make the arrangements." Bailey Hongzhuang was not the least bit surprised to hear that Bailey Jintao and the others had already left for the palace. Bailey Jintao had always despised her, and this wasn't the first time it had happened. Besides, she didn't want to attend the banquet together with that family anyways. In her eyes, they are not her, Bailey Hongzhuang's, family. Dressed up nicely, Bailey Hongzhuang left elegant Daylily Pavilion and headed to the general's household's gates. When people saw Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes all widened one after another in shock, glittering with doubt. Who is this girl? How did she suddenly appear in the general's household? I just saw her walk out of elegant Daylily Pavilion. Could it possibly be the second miss? You're joking. The second miss is blind. I think this girl resembles godly Dr. Square's Lady Honghang. Many people wondered, but no one tried to stop Bailey Hongzhuang. Just one look and they could see that this girl's status wasn't low. If they, the servants, were to block a noble miss, wouldn't that be equivalent to courting death? But when Bailey Honghang saw the sedan chair prepared for her by the entrance, a touch of ridicule appeared on her charming face. Because the sedan chair in front of her didn't even have any sedan bearers. They never planned on letting her go to the evening banquet from the beginning. Too hateful. Little Black's tiny face was angry. "Master, do you think we can find some sedan bearers?" Suddenly, a trail of heavy footsteps could be heard from a distance, and one could see a heavily decorated, ornate sedan chair slowly approaching. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't too surprised. She knew that it ought to be heading to the imperial palace for the drafting feast, but had no idea who was inside. "Wife, it seems like you can't reach the palace like that. Maybe, it's better for us to go together." The soft and rich voice seemed to hold a smile, familiar and teasing. A voice she happened to know especially well. Bailey Hongzhuang was startled to see Dibei Chen lift up the curtain, looking at her with a smile on his face. "Sure." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Dibei Chen must have already known her identity, otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm to see her here. At first, she had wanted to meet Dibei Chen, but after meeting him, she only knew that he wasn't simple, and didn't want to get involved with him. But despite avoiding him, they kept on meeting, again and again. Although this fellow's mouth was always speaking frivolously, she could tell that Dibei Chen held no bad intentions towards her. As for Dibei Chen's secret, she wasn't at all interested to inquire deeper. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang agree so easily, Dibei Chen's eyes held a touch of surprise. So his wife is also very smart. Until Bailey Hongzhuang entered the sedan chair, He Mu was touching his head doubtfully. Whenever Lady Bailey saw his master, she would always stamp her foot in anger and exasperation. Since when did their relationship become so harmonious? "It's said that your days in the general's household aren't very pleasant," Dibei Chen said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. "The world says the crippled prince spends all day depressed in his room when actually, he flies free and unrestrained." Hearing her words, the smile on Dibei Chen's face grew even wider. This man's uniquely handsome face and charming smile was unparalleled, enough to bring even entire kingdoms to ruin. "Like this, wife and I are kindred spirits. Maybe, if you weren't so shameless." A smile was on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Now that she was sure Dibei Chen meant no harm to her, their interactions naturally became a lot more gentle. "Today, you're entering the palace with that appearance. I'm afraid that his grudge against you isn't small, so you have to be careful. Don't provoke the emperor." Dibei Chen's voice suddenly turned serious, making Bailey Honghang rather surprised. Is he worried for her? She also understood the risks she's taking today by entering the palace. After all, using the identity of Hongzhuang to face other people's fine, but if she faces the emperor, then she would have committed the crime of deceiving a monarch. Black pupils as dark as ink stared fixedly at Dibei Chen's. Peering into those eyes that were as deep as an ocean, Bailey Hongzhuang simply couldn't see through him. The atmosphere in the sedan chair suddenly sunk into a peaceful calm. Both sides were face to face as if they wanted to see the other's intentions through their eyes. Suddenly, Dibei Chen's body loomed over her, closing the distance between them in a flash. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly drew back, a scowl forming on her exquisite face. In that moment earlier, her lips had clearly touched Dibei Chen's face. "Wife, I can't help it if you stare at me so lovingly." With his words, the atmosphere seemed to turn ambiguous. Although his now eyes twinkled with a smile, Bailey Hongzhuang clearly saw how his eyes flashed with seriousness. Shameless. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. When facing this guy's shamelessness, she had to be ashamed of her own inferiority. When He Mu suddenly heard a shout, "Shameless," from the sedan chair, his mind couldn't help but wander. Could his little lord possibly be doing something he shouldn't be to Lady Bailey? No, 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 how could that be possible? A thought emerged in his brain. Hey Moo slapped his head, I'm thinking too much. Imperial Garden. The colorful flowers enchantingly bloomed, like shimmering decorations as a rich, floral fragrance dispersed in the air. Expensive wine and delicious delicacies had already been laid out, an elegant, luxurious atmosphere inside the emperor's garden. But what was most appealing wasn't the flowers or expensive wine, but the beautiful, young maidens strolling in the garden. The maidens had all obviously dressed up carefully. Today, they were giving the crown prince the best possible them that they could be. The various ministers and officials greeted each other in clusters of twos and threes. The ladies smiled at each other politely, silently studying whose hair was nicer. His Majesty, the Emperor, the Empress, and His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived. A crisp sound rang out and everybody immediately stopped talking, instead standing silently and respectfully. A dazzling golden-robed figure slowly walked in the crowded garden, the Crown Prince and Empress walking on either side behind him. Xianyuan Yutian was donned in a dragon robe, his appearance just a bit past his prime. But even from the contours of his face, you could envision the handsomeness he had possessed as a youth. Imperial pressure permeated freely through the air, turning the imperial garden solemn. Dressed in a long, red dress embroidered with peonies, the Empress walked nobly and gracefully, her face clear and intelligent. Xianyuan Huan wore a yellow robe, a crown 3,000 inkstones thick sitting on his head. His posture was excellent, attracting the sights of many women. Long live His Majesty, the Emperor, the Empress, and His Highness, the Crown Prince. Everybody kneeled. His Royal Majesty, the Emperor Xianyuan Yutian smiled and raised his hand, you may rise. Today is a feast. Everybody drink heartily, don't stand on ceremony. Thanks the Emperor. I believe everybody knows the intent behind today's banquet. Empress Jiang Jinying face held a graceful smile, her beautiful face honorable as she spoke, the prince's age is suitable for marriage, and now it's time for him to choose his wife, the crown princess. When everybody heard, their eyes all lit up. This was precisely what they've been waiting for. The many maidens all looked at Xianyuan Huan bashfully, their faces blushed scarlet as their hearts beat with excitement. Crown Prince, how many girls dream of this? Compared to the other minister's joy, Bailey Jintao's face seemed to be very gloomy. This position of Crown Princess had nothing to do with him. The evening banquets already started. Bailey Hongzhuang still hasn't come. Bailey Jintao frowned. Both the Emperor and Empress had already arrived, but Bailey Hongzhuang still dared to be late. Bailey Haoxuan's face was puzzled, I'm unsure, but I'm afraid that she just doesn't want to come. Nonsense. Bailey Jintao's face was furious, this was the Emperor's imperial edict, how could she think that she has the right to not come? On this day the Crown Prince was choosing the main wife, Bailey Hongzhuang was one of the most paid attention to figures. If this matter wasn't linked to her, nobody would notice that she was missing. But now, almost everybody was looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. Once the Emperor asks, wouldn't they be finished? Sure enough, just as Bailey Jintao was worrying, the Prime Minister Li Qingxian asked, General Bailey, where's Bailey Honghang? I didn't see her today. The relationship between Li Qingxian and Bailey Jintao had always been tense. Now that there was an opportunity to embarrass Bailey Jintao, he naturally wouldn't let the chance go. Bailey Jintao's face sunk. This Li Qingxian was just looking for trouble. Noticing Bailey Jintao's face turning ugly, the smile on Li Qingxian's face widened, Bailey Hongzhuang isn't coming today. Bailey Jintao and Li Qingxian were both powerful officials, many people paid attention to their conversation. Speaking of Bailey Honghang, the crowd realized that they actually didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang once in the Imperial Garden today. Suddenly, the noisy garden fell stunningly silent. One after another, everybody turned to watch two figures moving in the distance, amazement and wonder reflected in their eyes. Bei Chen wore a golden robe, his handsome face graced by the heavens with a faintly discernible smile. His aura was calm and tranquil like wind, like a cool breeze in the forest, making people fall into a trance. Even in a wheelchair, his back was still straight. The dignified air released from his bones didn't lose to anyone present. From the moment he appeared, he seemed to emit a radiant light, attracting everybody's eyes. But what was most stunning wasn't Bei Chen, but the figure clad in white by his side. The woman was clothed in a white dress, outlining her fine and delicate figure. Her ink-black hair was casually bound in a bun, wisps of hair framed her face. She looked free and at ease. No makeup was piled upon her exquisite face, eyebrows curved like an azure feather, was skin like snow, and her waist soft and flexible like bundles of raw silk. Her pair of phoenix eyes shone like colored glass, twinkling brightly like a precious gem. Even when standing next to the imperial city's most handsome man, Bei Chen, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't lose in the least. Everybody couldn't help but lament. What a peerless beauty! Throughout the years, everybody sighed about how Bei Chen's unrivaled lure were incomparable to be matched to any women. But today, one had actually appeared. Hong Hong. Could she be godly Dr. Hong Hong? Nobody knew who shouted first, but all eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Godly Dr. Square's fame was widespread. Not a single person in the entire imperial city would not know about godly Dr. Square, and naturally, also about the godly Dr. Hongzhuang. With one look, everybody knew without a doubt, that this was godly Dr. Hongzhuang. But how come Hongzhuang and Bei Chen came together? Most importantly, though, how was Hongzhuang able to even attend the banquet? Bailey Yuyan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, a touch of hatred shining in her eyes. If it wasn't for this woman, how could she be reduced to who she was now? It was all thanks to this Hongzhuang, and now this woman actually dared to attend the drafting feast. Xianyuan Huan was also staring at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had never expected to see her here today. Since the day Hongzhuang had refused him, although he had never seen her since, his heart had never left her. Perhaps it was because no one had ever refused him outright before, or since Bailey Hongzhuang was simply too beautiful, but he had always dreamed about her. The dress Bailey Hongzhuang wore today exuded a fascinating charm. His feelings to the ministers as young misses faded away in a split second, replaced by a brilliant light as he looked at her. In his eyes, there was only Hongzhuang. When the maidens who were trying to attract Xianyuan Huan's attention saw Bailey Hongzhuang steal their limelight, their expressions all turned ugly. Today's the drafting feast for His Highness, so what's Hongzhuang doing here? Voices of jealousy and discontent spread amongst the crowd. Although she had previously rejected the crown prince, many people wondered, could she have had a change of heart? Bailey Yuyan directly stepped out of the crowd and spoke, Honghang, this is a banquet hosted by the imperial family. You who's not even the daughter of an official or minister, how could you be here? After her words were spoken, everybody's eyes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Even the distant emperor and empress silently noted down the fact. Bailey Hongzhuang laughed enchantingly. Although it wasn't as elegant, it invoked a different kind of charm. Sister, you don't recognize me? Her cold voice was mocking as she stared at Bailey Yuyan, enjoying the look on her face. Listening to her familiar voice, Bailey Yuyan turned as pale as a ghost, watching Bailey Hongzhuang, stunned as she asked, You? Why you are? Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly, her voice firm and unquestionable. I am Bailey Hongzhuang. Today, she had told everybody her true identity. Everybody stared at Bailey Honghang in shock. None of them were strangers to this name. The abandoned crown princess. The general household's second miss who was unable to cultivate that trash. With such a reputation, Bailey Honghang was like a joke in everybody's eyes, just a pitiful creature that a few sympathize with. But staring at that radiant figure in front of them, they were just simply unable to link the two together. Impossible, how could you be Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Yuyan's eyes widened as horror seized her heart, too panicked to even consider trying to maintain her image. Compared to Bailey Yuyan's blundering, Bailey Hongzhuang was indifferent, every move appearing elegant. We've been living together for more than 10 years, so even if you had blinded me, I've never forgotten how you looked. But you can't recognize me even as I stand right in front of you. I'm really saddened. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, casually saying the bloody facts as if they weren't about her. Everybody was in an uproar. The crowd all forgot about the evening banquet, immersed in Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Hongzhuang, she's actually the general household's trash miss, Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they had felt that the name Hongzhuang was a little familiar, none of them thought that the two names would be connected. Bailey Hongzhuang said Bailey Yuyan blinded her. Bailey Yuyan even robbed her little sister's fiancé, so why couldn't she have blinded Bailey Hongzhuang as well? Bailey Zhentao, Su Wanjing, and Bailey Haoshuan were frozen, stupefied. Focusing on the stunning face in front of them, they clearly felt it was somewhat familiar. Although they were reluctant to admit it, in their hearts, they clearly knew that this woman really was Bailey Hongzhuang. Whether it was looks or voice, they were practically the same. The only difference was her temperament, which had undergone an earth-shattering change. Bailey Yuyan's face was extremely ugly to behold. She just couldn't accept the fact right in front of her. She had always thought that her plans were always perfect. But if this woman in front of her really was Bailey Honghang, then wouldn't that mean Bailey Hongzhuang saw everything that she did? Then as a result, Bailey Hongzhuang can seek revenge. She had even told the public that Bailey Yuyan snatched Xianyuan Huan from her own little sister. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, who else could have known what happened so clearly? Xianyuan Huan was also shocked. Earlier, he had definitely probed around, and made sure that Hongzhuang and Bailey Honghang were entirely unrelated. But he never even dreamed that the two were actually the same person. How could she have changed so much? He had seen Bailey Honghang many times, and she was always been unbearably ugly and submissive. She couldn't catch even the slightest bit of his interest. But looking at her body blooming with a womanly brilliance, how could it possibly be the Bailey Honghang he loathed? It was impossible for somebody to change their appearance so much in such a short time. Before, was Bailey Hongzhuang deliberately hiding her looks? Thinking of this, Xianyuan Huan's expression became too ugly to be described. Since Bailey Hongzhuang arguably had no real reason to hide her looks, it could only mean one thing: she didn't want to marry him. Recalling when he had proposed to her, and how she had rejected him without hesitation, it must have been payback. He had abandoned her, so now she's rejecting him. He rejected her, so that must have been why she had thought that he was so unbearable. Xianyuan Yuqian and Jiang Jining looked at each other, doubt in their eyes. This elegant woman in front of them was Xianyuan Huan's betrothed that was said to be trash. General Bailey, what is this? Didn't she grow blind? Xianyuan Yuqian's voice was heavy. He had cancelled the engagement because he had heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had gone blind, but this woman standing here and the woman from the rumors were completely different. Cold sweat dripped from Bailey Zhentao's forehead as he said hastily, reporting to the emperor, Bailey Hongzhuang had indeed lost her sight earlier, but had been cured recently. Suddenly questioned, Bailey Zhentao could only fumble up some words. In fact, even he had no idea what happened. Cured? Xianyuan Yuqian frowned, then why didn't you say so? This little official had only just found out. Droplets of cold sweat oozed out from Bailey Zhentao. If his answer wasn't good, then he'd be faulted for deceiving the emperor. General, Godly Doctor Square has been opened before January even started. How could you've only found out today? Li Qingqian asked. In his heart, Bei Li Jintao silently cursed all 18 generations of Li Qingqian's family and said, Bei Li Honghang hid it from us, so we didn't know anything. Seeing Bei Li Jintao's panicked, quibbling appearance, although Xianyuan Huan's face was filled with displeasure, he stopped his questioning. We'll talk about this later. Bei Li Jintao's head bobbed up and down, his heart constantly thinking over what to say next time to the emperor. The most important thing is how he himself had no idea. The drafting feast continued, and the empress began to select some girls, one by one, and ask them to leave. They all left in a rush, embarrassed. Bei Li Hongzhuang lazily sampled the royal snacks as the palace maids and eunuchs shuttled back and forth, constantly replacing them with new desserts. The two black and white furballs watched the scene as if they had just seen a 10-foot-high cake, almost about to drool. Bei Li Hongzhuang was clearly in a good mood and warned the kids not to stray too far before letting them out to play. Di Bei Chen sat by Bei Li Hongzhuang's side, a light smile on his face as he asked, You aren't even a little bit worried? What do you think about Bei Li Jintao's status in Fengbo country? Bei Li Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow as she took a grape and ate it. Deeply ingrained, Di Bei Chen revealed a smile. With just a few words, he understood what Bei Li Honghang had meant. Because Bei Li Jintao always rushed headlong into the battlefield, his status was deeply ingrained in Fengbo country. Nowadays, the most suitable general to lead the fierce soldiers was Bei Li Jintao, so Xianyuan Yutian would be forced to consider the bigger picture, and so would only punish a little to prevent a lot. Although Bei Li Hongzhuang wasn't exactly close to Bei Li Jintao, she was still to be considered his daughter. There wouldn't be any life-threatening dangers. You've dealt a great hand, however now Bei Li Yuyan's really wretched. Following Di Bei Chen's line of sight, she noticed Bei Li Yuyan encompassed by a group of girls. Even with the distance, she could still hear their sarcastic words. You feel sorry for her? Bei Li Hongzhuang asked. She couldn't feel that Bei Li Yuyan was wretched. The sarcastic and mocking comments were only her first taste. But she, Bei Li Hongzhuang, had lived in such an environment her entire life. Even though Bei Li Yuyan's reputation wasn't very good now, the general household had never made her suffer. But for her, never full, always hungry, and even a servant could come and bully her as they pleased. In comparison, even now Bei Li Yuyan was already treated far better than her. Di Bei Chen shook his head, No, I don't feel sorry for her. Bei Li Honghang's eyes flashed, shocked. She had thought everyone would feel bad of Bei Li Yuyan, but why did Di Bei Chen think differently? But I do feel sorry for you. Di Bei Chen's words were serious. When he had investigated Bei Li Honghang's identity, he had also found out what her life was like before. It was hard to believe that this arrogant woman here today had actually grown up in that kind of environment. It was no wonder that she didn't feel the least bit bad for Bei Li Yuyan. If it was him, then he would have been even more merciless. Bei Li Honghang's face stiffened. This was the first time she had seen Di Bei Chen so serious. Not knowing what else to do, Bei Li Hongzhuang could only fake calmness as she watched the show, pretending nothing happened, eating her grapes. Wifey, are the grapes really that tasty? Di Bei Chen asked with a smile. Bei Li Hongzhuang glanced at the plate. She had already eaten all the grapes, and her hand had just been reaching for thin air. Pretty tasty. Bei Li Hongzhuang could only continue to act calm. Di Bei Chen grinned and pushed his own platter of grapes to Bei Li Hongzhuang, Since you like it, eat some more. Bei Li Hongzhuang stared at Di Bei Chen before continuing to eat the grapes. In fact, these grapes were actually really, really good. Bei Li Hongzhuang, what tricks are you playing? Bei Li Haoxuan walked briskly to Bei Li Hongzhuang, his young face filled with disgust. At first, when he had just seen Bei Li Honghang, Bei Li Haoxuan also astonished. But then he remembered that his older sister's current predicament was all because of Bailey Honghang. This woman truly made him feel disgusted from the bottom of his heart. What do my tricks have to do with you? Bailey Hongzhuang sneered at him. Since childhood, Bailey Haoxuan and her had never got along. Although she never did a thing, Bailey Haoxuan would always try to harm her whenever he got a chance. If you could describe Bailey Yuyan as spoiled, then Bailey Haoxuan would be considered ruthless. Bailey Haoxuan's face was dark as he growled through clenched teeth, "You did this to my sister today, I won't let you off." As he spoke, Bailey Haoxuan raised his glass, splashing it towards Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Bailey Hongzhuang's charming face turned cold. Just as she was about to move, Dibei Chen acted. He moved forward and swung open his fan, blocking all the water. Bailey Haoxuan's face paled as he looked at Dibei Chen. Could Dibei Chen and Bailey Hongzhuang possibly be in a relationship? Otherwise, why else would he help her? Whoosh! While Bailey Haoxuan was confused, Bailey Honghang had already picked up a pot of wine and threw it at his head. Drip! Drip! The wine ran down Bailey Haoxuan's face, dripping on the floor, ringing with a crisp sound. The originally extraordinary handsome Bailey Haoxuan had turned into a drenched chicken. He looked up at Bailey Hongzhuang, stunned. Up until now, Bailey Hongzhuang had never dared to fight back whenever he bullied her. What's been happening with Bailey Honghang recently? Everything's different from before. The corners of her mouth widened into a thoughtful smile. Bailey Honghang leaned over to whisper in Bailey Haoxuan's ear, "Now, it's not you who won't let me off, but I. Who won't let you off? I won't let you off." His voice was both confused and threatening. Bailey Haoxuan still felt as if her breath was by his ear, her words chilling the air, giving him an ominous premonition. "Bailey Hongzhuang, who cares if you're blind or not? You're still that trash, unable to withstand a single blow." Bailey Haoxuan forced himself to ignore it, his words strong and overbearing. Bailey Hongzhuang walked back, a smile still on her face as she spat out the words one by one, "Come, at, me." Humph! Bailey Haoxuan snorted coldly and left angrily. He didn't believe that trash would be able to do anything. After the evening banquet ends, she'll be the one out of luck. Watching Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, Dibei Chen smiled. "You've just offended all of the general's household again. It's a rather dangerous spot for you to return to now. Since I've come out, I never had any plans on returning to the general's household." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold. Even if she were to tell Bailey Jintao that she wasn't trash, it was unlikely that anything would change. He had always despised her since the day she was born. Dibei Chen's smile widened, "Well, if wifey has nowhere to go, then my Chen Imperial Palace will always welcome you." Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned disdainful. How come every time the guy begins to act decent, he just has to reveal his true colors? As they chattered, the drafting feast began to finish. Empress Jiang Jining asked for Xianyuan Huan for his opinion, a smile on her face. "Huan, who do you like?" Today's drafting feast not only for them to select a crown princess, but also for Xianyuan Huan to get some concubines and servants. This, Xianyuan Huan can choose himself. Xianyuan Yutian also smiled, "If there's any woman you favor, just say her name." Everybody turned to stare at Xianyuan Huan. The maidens eagerly looked at him, anticipating his answer, hoping they managed to attract his attention. Bailey Yuyan also watched eagerly. She still remembered the loving words they shared together, and hoped that he did as well. "I want her." Xianyuan stretched out his finger, pointing at a woman. Bailey Honghang was bored to death as she chatted idly with Dibei Chen. During the banquet, she had actually become quite familiar with him. Thankfully, this guy also didn't really like the banquet, so they both preferred to sit in the corner and eat happily. But suddenly, everybody's eyes were on them. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her eyes and looked around. The person Xianyuan Huan was referring to was actually her. Bailey Hongzhuang. Xianyuan Huan slowly said. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, his eyes had never moved elsewhere. Although he didn't understand how Bailey Hongzhuang changed so much, he just couldn't forget about her. Just by watching Bailey Hongzhuang and Dibei Chen chattering so happily, his heart was uncomfortable. In any case, he just had to get Bailey Hongzhuang as his woman. When everybody saw Xianyuan Huan choose Bailey Honghang, the expressions on their face all became strange. Only a month ago, Bailey Hongzhuang was abandoned by him, and moreover, Xianyuan Huan himself had even asked for the engagement to be cancelled many times. But now he wants her back. Isn't this just like a joke? Bailey Yuyan watched Xianyuan Huan in shock. She couldn't believe that he actually chose Bailey Hongzhuang. Xianyuan Yutian and Jiang Jinying's faces' expressions momentarily turned ugly when they heard his answer. Xianyuan Huan could choose any woman present in the banquet. Any woman but Bailey Hongzhuang. Cannot. Xianyuan Yutian's voice was imposing, with the aura of a ruler. A emperor's words weren't a joke. He himself had cancelled the engagement before, so how could he go back and make Bailey Hongzhuang the crown princess again? No matter how amazing Bailey Hongzhuang may be now, she and Xianyuan Huan absolutely cannot be together again. Xianyuan Huan's expression changed as he looked at Xianyuan Yutian's rigid face, about to retort back when Jiang Jinying suddenly stopped him. Huan, don't make trouble. Jiang Jiaying lowered her voice. Imperial Mother, your son only likes Bailey Hongzhuang. Xianyuan Huan stressed the fact. Jiang Jinying's beautiful face frowned. There's so many people here, and yet you still dare to contradict your father. Do you not want to be crown prince anymore? When Xianyuan Huan insisted on breaking off the engagement, Xianyuan Yutian was already displeased. Wanting it again in such an event is simply impossible. Listening to Jiang Jinying's words, Xianyuan Huan couldn't help but be shocked. Taking a quick glance to see his father's sharp eyes, he could only shut his mouth obediently without any other words. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but relax. Thankfully, she didn't need to intervene for the problem to be solved. Xianyuan Huan's stupidity really made her want to pull her brains out. After, Xianyuan Huan just sat expressionless, letting his mother Jiang Jinying pick out a few concubines for him. If he couldn't get Bailey Hongzhuang, then he didn't care who he got. Seeing Xianyuan Huan act obediently, Jiang Jinying also felt relieved. She was only a woman, and absolutely could not let the emperor's feelings of Huan change. In the end, Xianyuan Yutian declared Fengbo's country's prime minister, Li Qingxian's daughter, Li Yuyue, as the crown prince's wife. Whether it was appearance, background, or compatibility to Xianyuan Huan, Li Yuyue was very appropriate. Li Qingxian led Li Yuyue to receive the edict. He and Bailey Zhentao were of equal status, but now that his daughter was the crown princess, Bailey Zhentao couldn't be compared with him in the future. Thanks the emperor. Li Qingxian's smile was beaming, smugly sending a glance to Bailey Zhentao. Bailey Zhentao's expression ashened. This Li Qingxian was too hateful. With the glance, he noticed Bailey Hongzhuang sitting by Dibei Chen. Suddenly, he had an idea. Your Majesty, today His Highness, the Crown Prince's day to choose a wife. Prince Chen also isn't young and is still unmarried, so why not take advantage of the opportunity today and lay down a marriage? His Highness, the Crown Prince actually chose Bailey Hongzhuang out of all the girls here. That wasn't good at all for Yuyue. Listening, Xianyuan Yutian asked, is there somebody you would like to recommend? The general household's second miss, Bailey Hongzhuang. What does the emperor think? Li Qingxian suggested. Xianyuan Yutian pondered. Dibei Chen still wasn't married, and with his appearance, it's impossible for him to leave Fengbo country. Like this, he might as well let him be happy and choose an engagement. Jiang Jiniying's eyes shined brightly. The lady Li Qingqian recommended is very good. Emperor, I think that Bailey Hongzhuang and Prince Chen match each other rather well. How about you? She cannot let Xianyuan Huan's status be threatened. So long as Bailey Hongzhuang's engaged and married off, the flames in his heart would naturally die off. Xianyuan Huan's eyes widened in shock. Did his mother actually just propose to have Bailey Hongzhuang to marry Dibei Chen? Very good, I approve. Xianyuan Yuqian laughed heartily. With a wave of his hand, the engagement was approved. Bailey Hongzhuang and Dibei Chen stared at each other, unable to believe that they were engaged, just like that. Bailey Jintao's face darkened. The emperor didn't even look at him once before settling the engagement. From this, he could tell that he was very unhappy over today's matter. For him, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mean anything. Since the emperor said to marry. In any case, rather than having that kind of trash waste space staying at home, it's better to just marry her out. When Bailey Yuyan heard this, her eyes glittered with excitement. What did Bailey Hongzhuang get for stealing the limelight and showing off? Now, she had to marry a crippled prince. Everybody knew that although the emperor made him a prince, he actually doesn't favor him at all. Marrying him, it'd be like marrying a dead end. A blind trash with a disabled wastrel. What a perfect match. Bailey Haoshuan sneered. It looks like he didn't need to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang himself. Just by marrying Dibei Chen, she's already suffering a huge punishment. This lady Honghang is really pitiful. She was abandoned by the crown prince, blinded by her own sister, and now is even betrothed to Prince Chen. Although Prince Chen's looks are unrivaled, he is still, after all, a cripple. Looks like Bailey Honghang's ruined in this life. Wifey, it looks like I'm destined to become your man. Dibei Chen raised an eyebrow, grinning at Bailey Honghang, although I usually don't like Li Qingqian, now I kind of do. He Mu looked at Dibei Chen astonished. When the emperor announced Dibei Chen's engagement, he had been worried, but his little lord actually didn't seem to care. Don't tell me. Did he accept it? This was the little lord he had served for many, many years. Wasn't little lord uninterested in women? He Mu felt something burst in his mind. He simply couldn't accept the new changes that had just occurred. When they had first come to Fengbo country, the emperor had actually already proposed a marriage to him. But at that time, his little lord rejected it without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang curled her lip. She never thought such a thing would happen over only a dinner today. So this thing, there's no other way out. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, and asked. You want to defy the edict? Dibei Chen raised a fine eyebrow, his smile utterly bewitching as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. No. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Someone who hasn't married, marries. If I marry you, at least your face is pleasing to the eye, although poor. Her face was clear and sparkling like jade, smile like moving water. She knew clearly that no matter what she does, the emperor and empress wouldn't be happy. Even if she doesn't marry Dibei Chen, they'll still think up of some way to get rid of her. It just so happened that she also didn't have anywhere to stay. Chen Imperial Palace is pretty good. Bailey Hongzhuang accepts the edict. Under the eyes of sympathy and mockery, Bailey Hongzhuang accepted the edict, her face indifferent. Turning her body, a proud smile floating on her face. Bailey Hongzhuang's calmness far surpassed their expectations. Turning from a crown princess into a disabled prince's wife, the difference wasn't small. Everybody thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be in despair, but from start to finish, nobody saw any trace of sadness on her face. Putting away the edict, her back was straight as she calmly walked back to her seat. Sitting down, she simply chat and smile just as merrily as before. making everybody stare at each other in shock. She's only acting stubborn, who knows when she'll ruin her own life. Bailey Yuyan sneered. She couldn't get used to seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's noble appearance, proudly walking as if nobody entered her eyes. Older sister, once the banquet's over, will teach her a lesson and remind her she's just trash. Jet black pupils glittering ruthlessly, Bailey Haoxuan comforted Bailey Yuyan. Whoever irritates his sister, he'll make sure they suffer. A smiling expression reappeared on Bailey Yuyan's face, her eyes growing more and more vicious. Haoxuan, this time we'll make Bailey Hongzhuang pay the price. With the old silly, naive Bailey Hongzhuang, she only liked to watch her act like an idiot. Bailey Haoxuan was the one who truly called the shots. Now that both sides tore apart her face, she won't be polite. Daring to rob His Highness, the Crown Prince's heart, she'll definitely make that trash taste life worse than death. Wifey, we'll be married soon. When do you want the betrothal gifts? Dibei Chen's handsome face smiled thoughtfully as he raised an eyebrow, asking Bailey Hongzhuang. Xianyuan Yutian had long wanted to arrange a marriage for him, but he was never interested. But since the woman was Bailey Hongzhuang, he actually didn't want to refuse. Bailey Hongzhuang laughed, her eyes flashing with disdain. You, the pauper that can't even afford to give 100 gold coins, what can you gift me? Wife, your words are wrong. His eyes that were as deep as an ocean glittered with seriousness. As my, Dibei Chen's wife, you'll be sure to see a great sight. Bailey Hongzhuang was startled. His serious words had almost given her an illusion. But then she just laughed. Wasn't Dibei Chen best at cracking jokes? While Bailey Hongzhuang and Dibei Chen were talking, Bailey Yuyan slowly walked up to Bailey Hongzhuang. A sarcastic smile was on her mutilated face. Dear sister, I would like to congratulate you. Seducing the crown prince won't do, but now you have to marry a country's crippled prince, haha. Bailey Yuyan raised her head and laughed, staring at Bailey Hongzhuang. But you were never someone worthy of the crown prince. Now you and this cripple, on the other hand, is a perfect match indeed. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Although she didn't really care if Bailey Yuyan mocked her or not, purposely rubbing salt in Dibei Chen's wounds is just too much. Dibei Chen had no idea that he had a cursed physique and only feared his legs getting worse. For any teenager to experience such a thing, their heart would naturally feel uneasy. This was a wound of the heart. Bailey Yuyan, what does my marriage have to do with you? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were ice cold. Instead of thinking about me, you might as well think about how to cure your mutilated face. Ugly. The word ugly seemed to hit Bailey Yuyan's sore spot as she jumped up in a fluster. You don't have to bother about my face, you'll be following a cripple for your whole life. Bailey Yuyan's voice blazed with anger. That's right, my crippled legs are indeed not worthy to be with Bailey Hongzhuang. Dibei Chen suddenly spoke, a graceful and charming smile on his handsome face. Bailey Yuyan was startled, staring at his peerlessly elegant face that could even shake the heavens themselves. If Dibei Chen wasn't crippled, then he'd surely be an unmatched talent in his generation. Even though her heart was devoted to Xianyuan Huan, Bailey Yuyan had to admit that she's never seen anybody's face so perfect. When she heard Dibei Chen say that he wasn't worthy of Bailey Hongzhuang, her heart felt a little strange. Dibei Chen didn't actually like Bailey Hongzhuang. This wasn't what she wanted to see. But Dibei Chen's next words turned Bailey Yuyan's expression unbearably ugly. Hongzhuang's engagement to Benwang might be a grievance, but Lady Bailey, with your face, I'm afraid people would only want to marry you to climb the ladder. Dibei Chen suddenly spoke. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised, but when she heard his words, she couldn't help but burst out into laughter. Pfft! Her peerlessly clear, beautiful face lit up with a radiant smile like the most beautiful flower in the imperial garden, one that nobody could move their eyes away from. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her thumb. This guy's tongue just couldn't be compared to others. Bailey Yuyan stood, stupefied. Her brain couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Usually, Bei Chen was always polite to her, how could he suddenly say such words to her? Her face turned from purple to red, to green, to black, and then to blue. Bailey Yuyan bit her red lips, her body unable to stop shaking. If it wasn't for the banquet, then she really would have taught them a lesson. You just wait. I won't let you off. Bailey Yuyan stared until her eyes turned red. She'll make Bei Chen regret this. Bailey Hongzhuang, if you so long return to the general's household tonight, I definitely won't let you have an easy time. At this moment, Bei Chen's face suddenly turned cold. Bailey Yuyan, now Hongzhuang is Ben Wang's fiancé. If you dare to touch a hair on her body, Ben Wang will make you regret it. His icy cold voice sounded like it was from hell itself. Bei Chen stared at Bailey Yuyan, an imposing aura suddenly erupting from him. Looking into his eyes that were as deep as the sea, Bailey Yuyan could clearly tell Bei Chen wasn't joking. The thick killing intent made the tiny hairs on her stand up and shiver. In that moment, she knew that this crippled prince wasn't weak in the least. Why? Why does Bailey Hongzhuang always end up with the good things? Why does Bei Chen protect her like that? Their marriage was only set today, and before that, she even seduced Xianyuan Huan. Bailey Yuyan was puzzled. Bailey Hongzhuang rejected Xianyuan Huan in his face, but yet he still wanted to marry her. What place could she be than worse than trash? When Bei Chen had taken action, the look in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes slowly began to change as she looked at him. He protected her. Her mind couldn't help but recall his words that he had spoken so seriously, but, I do feel sorry for you. At first when she had just met Bei Chen, she had only thought that he was a pitiful creature, easily bullied by others. But after she saved him, Bailey Hongzhuang could only think of him as a shameless rascal. But now as she watched Bei Chen defend her, an indescribable feeling arose in her heart. She was touched. In her previous life, after her parents fell, she became the family head. She alone had to shoulder the whole family's burden. This life, nobody stepped in to defend her, nobody even said a word as she was suffered under the mocking words. But now, there was somebody who protected her. In such heavy murderous intent, Bailey Yuyan felt a cold chill seize her from her back to the top of her head, as if she had just fallen inside an ice cellar. Bailey Yuyan, the price of angering a crippled prince isn't something you can afford. Bei Chen retracted his murderous aura and acted like nothing ever happened, a warm and carefree smile on his attractive face. Bailey Yuyan no longer believed that Bei Chen was a powerless waste. The killing intent he emitted had almost stopped her from breathing. After Bailey Yuyan stiffly left, Bei Chen's smile turned evil. Wifey, wasn't your husband's performance super brave? You must be completely charmed by me. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Bei Chen, speechless. This guy just completely spoiled the mood. How could her heart have been touched by such a guy just now? Surely after it passed, Bailey Hongzhuang's original temperament would come back, and it wouldn't influence her anymore. Right. That had to be so. Before long, Bei Chen was summoned by the emperor. Feeling bored, Bailey Hongzhuang decided to take a stroll around the imperial garden. The emperor's imperial garden was truly remarkable. Many precious and exotic varieties of flowers were grown, competing as they bloomed beautifully. Some of the women were also admiring the flowers, but nobody had a good opinion of Bailey Hongzhuang, who had completely stolen the limelight and walked away. Nobody approached her. Why did you deceive me? Xianyuan Huan appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang, his deep, hoarse voice revealing both sadness and dissatisfaction. The sudden voice at first startled her, but when she realized who it was, a trace of impatience appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face. I didn't specifically deceive you. I have had also deceive others, and in passing, you as well. Bailey Hongzhuang said casually. Xianyuan Huan looked straight at Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes flashing with unhappiness. Were you always acting so submissively before just because you hated me? Bailey Hongzhuang sneered when she heard the anger in his voice, knowing this is useful. Since His Highness, the Crown Prince seems to enjoy strolling around the garden, I shall not disturb you. Lightly turning around, Bailey Hongzhuang walked back to the banquet. She just didn't want to exchange words with Xianyuan Huan. But just as she took a step, Xianyuan Huan grabbed her right hand. Quickly, give me an answer. Xianyuan Huan's face was livid. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and waved her right hand, voice hard, let go of me. But Xianyuan Huan's grip actually tightened, refusing to let her leave. If you want to go back, then answer my question. Do you really hate me that much? He just couldn't understand. Before, Bailey Hongzhuang was infatuated with him, even going as far as to commit suicide. How could she suddenly change? He wasn't willing to believe it. How could she even stage her own suicide for this? Bailey Hongzhuang stopped moving and turned to look at Xianyuan, her voice resolute and decisive, I hate you. Xianyuan Huan was startled, why? Why? Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was taunting, think of the things you've done to me. What have you done that didn't make me hate you? The former Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was hell-bent on Xianyuan Huan, but he had never even seen her as a real person. Looking at the undisguised disgust in her eyes, Xianyuan Huan couldn't help but flinch. Indeed, with everything he had done, it'd be strange for Bailey Hongzhuang to not hate him. I promise that I'll take good care of you, so can we be together? Xianyuan Huan spoke seriously, although I can't make you the crown princess, I will give you the most love. He simply couldn't forget the stunning beauty that soothed his pain away. As a prince, he could get any woman he desired, but yet the only woman he wanted was Bailey Hongzhuang. He was confident that as long as he pleaded with his father, he'd definitely be able to annul Bailey Hongzhuang and Dibei Chen's marriage. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Xianyuan Huan for a moment before suddenly saying, did your brain go bad? What I've said is true. Xianyuan Huan stressed these words. Even if what you said is true, so what? Bailey Hongzhuang sneered, Xianyuan Huan, in my heart, you're the same as a repugnant bug. 15 years of my life have been destroyed under your shadow. It's no longer possible for us to have any sort of connection. Let go. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was decisive. No matter how much Xianyuan Huan regretted, she wasn't willing to have any kind of tie with this such a guy. Watching Bailey Hongzhuang break free of his grip and walk away, Xianyuan Huan exclaimed, you'd rather marry that cripple than to follow me? You should know, that trash's life is grasped in the palm of my hand. Listening, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned cold, in my heart, you're incomparable to him. Xianyuan Huan's angry eyes glimmered maliciously. What qualifications didn't he have compared to Dibei Chen who could easily be trampled underfoot? Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang had even said he was incomparable to that trash. Impossible. Covering the distance in a twinkle of the eye, he rushed towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Without saying a thing, he moved forward to kiss her. The women I fancy, I absolutely will not allow others to get their hands on them. Even Bailey Hongzhuang never expected Xianyuan Huan to do such a crazy thing. In that moment, her right hand suddenly lifted, a loud slap greeting his face. Pa! Xianyuan Huan clutched his face and looked angrily at Bailey Hongzhuang, you dared to hit me? Doing such a thing, you should have been prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face was pale as her voice grew more and more cold. Xianyuan Huan, I look down on you. Her voice fell, and Bailey Hongzhuang glared at Xianyuan Huan icily before immediately returning to the banquet. Xianyuan Huan's actions were enough to make her feel nauseous. This Xianyuan Huan is just too shameless. Little Black muttered, he even tried to forcibly kiss you, what a pervert. Perhaps Xianyuan Huan is regretting that very, very much now, Little White smiled proudly. Watching Xianyuan Huan eat defeat from their hands made his mood turn incredibly refreshed. Before long, she arrived back at her seat. Di Bei Chen had also already came back. Wifey, that slap wasn't light. Di Bei Chen laughed lightly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flickered with light, you saw. I couldn't find you when I came back, so I had He Mu push me around and then saw a scene I shouldn't have seen. No matter what, I'm still your fiancé. When I'm encountering something like that, shouldn't you have come forward? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. I knew that wife would teach him a lesson. Di Bei Chen shrugged his shoulders, his lips lined with bewitching charm as they curved into a confident smile. With Bailey Hongzhuang's temper, she definitely wouldn't give Xianyuan Huan even the slightest chance. Plus, he also wanted to see how she would deal with the situation. Sure enough, without my help, you've solved the problem. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at his face full of smiles and couldn't help but wonder, this guy couldn't have heard her say Xianyuan was incomparable to him, could he have? But Di Bei Chen never said anything about it and only make a few jokes, casting away the doubts in her heart. The evening banquet ended. She chose not to return with Bailey Zhentao and the others, but instead with Di Bei Chen. Wifey, how about you stay in Chen Palace from now? Di Bei Chen blinked, his voice full of smiles. Bailey Hongzhuang tossed a glance at him, not interested. Finished speaking, she turned back and ignored him, directly going back to the general's household. This time, she only wanted to pack her things together. There was no more meaning in continuing to stay at the general's household. She didn't know if Bailey Yuyan or any other crazed fools would destroy her mother's possessions, so she has to take them with her. Di Bei Chen watched Bailey Hongzhuang's figure disappear off into the distance, a trace of seriousness present on his handsome face. This woman was really different. When Bailey Zhentao and the others returned, they quickly asked somebody if Bailey Hongzhuang may have returned. When they received a positive answer, they all rushed to her elegant daylily pavilion. No matter what, they must make Bailey Hongzhuang confess today. With Little Black's and Little White's help, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly packed up Qin Yayan's belongings. Her mother had been passed away for many years now, and there weren't much but some jewelry. But in the jewelry, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised to find a booklet, Qin Yayan's diary. Casually opening a few pages, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that it was the most meaningful item within the piles of jewelry. Bailey Hongzhuang stuffed the diary inside her yin-yang pouch before walking towards the general household's gate. Before she even reached the front gates, she could hear Bailey Zhentao roar loudly. Bailey Hongzhuang, you unfilial daughter, get over here. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her brows a little, the corners of her mouth widening into a thoughtful smile. Did this old man still think she was like the former Bailey Hongzhuang? Slowly walking through the hall, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Bailey Zhentao, Su Wanjing, Bailey Yuyan, and Bailey Haoshuan standing together, their faces all dark and gloomy. When were your eyes healed? Bailey Zhentao's voice sunk. When the emperor had asked him, he was simply speechless. He must get the answer and report it to the emperor tomorrow. Forgot. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was light. Bailey Zhentao's anger hit the roof. Bailey Honghang, do you know whom you're talking to? Knows, General Bailey Zhentao. Even though Bailey Zhentao's face was absolutely livid, hers was as calm as ever. Noticing the indifference on her face, Bailey Zhentao grew even more furious, abruptly raising his palm to deliver a slap. It looks like he would need to teach her a lesson before she can confess. Bailey Yuyan's eyes glimmered with excitement. Earlier at the banquet, Bailey Hongzhuang was acting with such arrogance, but now, that same trash is getting taught a lesson for being so impetuous. Su Wanjing stood behind Bailey Jintao, the corners of her mouth unable to help but curve up into a smile. Daring to make their family unhappy, Bailey Hongzhuang deserved to be punished. Feeling the swift and fierce wind from the oncoming palm, a ruthless gleam appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Her indifferent face turned hard. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hesitate to meet the blow. Nobody had thought that she would actually block it, her palm easily meeting Bailey Jintao's. Bailey Jintao was also stunned. He had only wanted to teach the girl a lesson, make her lie in bed for a few days. But he never expected that she would actually block it. That hand was most likely already crippled. Bailey Hongzhuang is still Prince Chen's fiancée. If he directly abandoned Bailey Hongzhuang due to her hand, it's sure to bring gossip. But what happened next was even more unimaginable. Everybody in the hall was absolutely shocked. Because even after blocking Bailey Jintao's hit, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely unharmed. This. Bailey Jintao looked at her, stunned. Just now, he had clearly felt power seep out of Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. What happened? Bailey Yuyan looked quizzically at Bailey Jintao. She didn't understand why he had such a shocked expression on his face. How could Bailey Hongzhuang block father's hit? Bailey Haoxuan's eyes flashed with confusion. Although father had held back, it still wasn't a power Bailey Hongzhuang could compete with. When did you start cultivating? Bailey Jintao asked calmly. After venting, he was far calmer than before. Today's Bailey Hongzhuang was really too strange, changing from meek trash into a stunning beauty. Not only did she become the godly doctor praised by all, but could even cultivate with her trash physique. This transformation was just too unthinkable. Hearing his words, Bailey Yuyan couldn't help but be shocked, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang incredulously. Since the age of 5, Bailey Hongzhuang was labeled as trash due to her useless physique that was unable to cultivate. But suddenly, now they're told that she could even cultivate. What was even more unfathomable was that she didn't even have a single merit law scripture. Without it, how could somebody cultivate? Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Haoxuan glanced at each other, doubtful. So all along, it wasn't them playing Bailey Hongzhuang, but her playing them? What does my cultivation have to do with you? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were full of sarcasm. Since the beginning to end, this so-called father had never cared a thing for her. Even now that she revealed her strength, all she got was Bailey Jintao's rage. I told you to answer my words, not ask me a question. Bailey Jintao's voice grew lower and lower, a clear threat underlying his tone. You asked me, and I must answer. What kind of rule is this? Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was sarcastic. For 15 years, you've never cared for my life and death anyways, so now, you don't have anything to do with me. When were my eyes cured? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, should you have bothered to send a doctor to examine me, wouldn't you already know? You still dare to speak like that? Bailey Jintao was livid with anger. He was the master of the general's household with absolute dignity, who dared to speak with him like this. Bailey Jintao, you never fulfilled the role as my father, so why should act out my role as your daughter? Between us, nobody owes anything. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were loud and clear, from as early as when Bailey Jintao chose to leave for the palace without her to save their family's face, she had already cut off all ties in her heart. If you have the ability, then get out of the general's household. I, Bailey Jintao, never had such a daughter. Bailey Jintao shouted angrily. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her face, indifferent, that was my intention. From now on, I have no relationships to the general's household. Her voice fell. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around to walk towards the general's household gates without hesitation. When she appeared outside, she knew that now, she was no longer one of the general household's people. Bailey Jintao never thought that Bailey Honghang would actually leave. For a long time, he stood staring at her back. He couldn't say anything. The moment Bailey Honghang stepped past the general household's gates, an unspeakable loneliness washed over her. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the words, General Household, inscribed on the plaque. She had lived here for 15 years, but it was never her home. And the people inside were never her family. Perhaps when she transmigrated, she was destined for a life of loneliness. The forlorn look in her eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by resolute firmness. To have no cares, it might even be a good thing. From here on, she will only live for herself. But then, she turned around to see He Mu standing not so far away from the general household's gates. When He Mu saw Bailey Honghang walk out, he smiled. Sure enough, the prince's words were correct. He said Lady Bailey would definitely leave, and you really did leave. Bailey Honghang was somewhat startled. How could you be here? Prince said that since you suddenly left the general household, there would be a lot of things you haven't prepared for, and specifically asked me to bring you some supplies. Yin Yang pouch, those small bags that have another dimensional space inside, has been changed to Heaven and Earth pouch. Accepting the Heaven and Earth pouch from He Mu, Bailey Honghang quickly took a look to see quilts and other such supplies readily available. A burst of warmth appeared in her heart. What else did he say? Bailey Honghang's voice was gentle. In this kind of situation, in this kind of time, there were still people that only thought of themselves. Prince also said that Godly Doctor Square wasn't a place suitable for somebody to live in. If Lady Bailey isn't willing to live at Qin Imperial Palace, then Prince said there's another courtyard that you can live in. Listening, a trace of surprise fluttered by Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. She never heard that Dibei Chen had more than one residence in the imperial city before. Noticing Bailey Honghang's surprise, He Mu took the initiative to explain, Prince personally bought the other courtyard and rarely goes there, so almost nobody knows. Bailey Honghang thought and suddenly realized, Dibei Chen was doing this for the sake of her reputation. Since she and the general households broke off all ties, the news wouldn't be pleasant to hear, not to mention that she was just recently engaged. If there was another mistake, then she was afraid that the emperor would find her unbearable and send some people to deal with her. Godly Doctor Square was too conspicuous. If she lived in Godly Doctor Square, it wouldn't be long before everybody would find out, which was why Dibei Chen let her stay somewhere else. If Lady Bailey doesn't mind, shall I escort you to the courtyard now? He Mu's eyes revealed a hint of joy. His little lord had never regarded women rudely, but always treated Bailey Honghang a little specially. If the two could really become a couple, then he would be happy for his lord from the bottom of his heart. Then I'll be troubling you. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle, her eyes clear and bright. Dibei Chen's other residence wasn't too far from the palace, not noisy but quiet, and was actually a very good place. Bright Jingli Garden. With just a step into Jingli Garden, Bailey Hongzhuang could easily smell the peach blossoms, and a large expanse of pink peach trees appeared in her sight. Her mouth stretched into a beautiful, clear smile. As she walked through the peach trees, a breeze blew, scattering petals as they fell. From afar, she looked just like a peach blossom fairy. As she walked, a pale golden figure emerged in her vision. The moonlight was fascinating. Hazy droplets of light shined upon Dibei Chen's body, making him look even more beautiful and elegant. You arrived. Those two simple words revealed confidence and certainty, as if he had expected for Bailey Hongzhuang would choose to come here. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Moonlight, peach blossom trees, a stone table, and wine, you really know how to enjoy life. That's wrong. Dibei Chen shook his head. Moonlight, peach blossom trees, a beauty, wine, it's all meant to be enjoyed. Bei Li Hongzhuang didn't care about Di Bei Chen's teasing and directly sat opposite to him. Such beautiful scenery on such a beautiful day, it'd be a waste not to enjoy a small drink. What do you think? Di Bei Chen picked up the flask of wine and handed it to Bei Li Hongzhuang. She accepted it, staring deeply at Di Bei Chen. She wondered if this was because he knew of her loneliness. If that was the case, then Di Bei Chen really was determined. In this night of farewell to the past, she only wanted to indulge, just this once. They chatted as they drank their wine. Nobody talked about the past, only teasing each other and randomly. It continued until Bei Li Hongzhuang laid passed out on the table. Di Bei Chen looked at her, her cheeks a beautiful drunken red. He smiled a smile as bright as the sun. If you ever feel lonely again, at least I'll still be with you. Di Bei Chen's voice was gentle. The soft light shining in his eyes was enough to make any woman fall intoxicated. After he tucked Bei Li Hongzhuang in bed and covered her with a quilt, Di Bei Chen left Jingli Garden. Prince, shall I get some girls as attendants for Lady Bei Li? Di Bei Chen waved his hand. With her temper, an attendant would only trouble her. He Mu pondered. Indeed, that did seem like Bei Li Hongzhuang's style. When Bei Li Hongzhuang woke up the next day, it was already past noon. She went outside. When she saw the multitudes of peach blossoms covering the sky, creating a world of pink, her mood unconsciously grew better. Only after seeing the peach blossom forest, did she understand just why Di Bei Chen bought this courtyard. The peach trees brought a certain benefit to Di Bei Chen's body. It slowed down the spread of his paralysis. Godly Doctor Square. When Bei Li Hongzhuang arrived at Godly Doctor Square, Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu were both very worried for her. Lady Bei Li, are you all right? Under Dong Sairu's unceasing hints, Du Tianxua summoned his courage to ask. Dong Sairu's voice followed, Lady Bei Li, you have to look at the bright side. Even though Prince Chen's legs are crippled, I've heard everything else was pretty good. It was a bright day today. The news that Hongzhuang was actually the general household's second miss, Bei Li Hongzhuang, was scattered throughout the city streets. Only until everybody was talking about it, confirmed by the royal courtier, and the lady herself, did they finally believe it. The news was just so stunning. The useless trash miss that had not a single merit to speak of, to the miss whose medicinal skills could be considered as godly. But these two women whose differences could be said to be like heaven and earth were actually the same person. After they learned Bei Li Hongzhuang's true identity, the two men didn't have enough time to be happy when they heard of her sudden engagement. Bei Li Hongzhuang, Prince Chen. The biggest joke and the second biggest joke of the imperial city were engaged into an even bigger joke. Looking at the two somewhat anxious faces, Bei Li Hongzhuang smiled, don't worry about me, I don't think this is a bad thing. Hearing her words, Du Shuatian and Dong Sairu were both stunned, shocked as they looked at Bei Li Hongzhuang. They even thought that they heard it wrong. But when they saw her indifferent, free and smiling face, they knew that they hadn't misunderstood. Lady Bei Li, you really aren't sad? Dong Sairu's voice sounded incredulous. Falling from a crown princess into a waste princess, how could she calm down so easily? What's so sad about it? Bei Li Hongzhuang smiled and asked, Di Bei Chen is far more handsome than Shenyuan Huan, so why can't I prefer the better-looking one? Well, that's true. Noticing the patients, Bei Li Hongzhuang directly went ahead and began by taking their pulses before diagnosing and treat them. After the 10 patients were treated, she started to prepare. Dong Sairu looked at Bei Li Hongzhuang's back and couldn't help but murmur, handsomeness is indeed handsome, but that wasn't the point. Under the sunset's glow, the clouds seemed to shine in the maroon sky and even the ground under the crowd's feet seemed to have caught a red tint. 10,000 Medicine Lane. When Ji Wenbin saw Bei Li Hongzhuang come, a trace of unhappiness appeared on his face. How might have Lady Bailey made the time to come here? Check back later. Big Brother G, were you mad at me? A flattering smile bloomed on Bailey Hongzhuang's face as she walked over to face Ji Wenbin. Since she's come here, the first person to treat her with kindness was Ji Wenbin. She didn't want to let such a thing to ruin their relationship. Those who sent help in one's hour of need must always be treated seriously. How could I dare be mad at you? Ji Wenbin's cold voice revealed a trace of dissatisfaction. Big Brother Ji. Bailey Honghang called out, you should also know that I was in a special situation at that time. I was grounded by the general, so if I used my real name, it'd become very disadvantageous. I could only use an alias. Apart from this, I've never done anything to deceive you. Ji Wenbin still didn't say anything. When he had heard the news earlier today, he had nearly jumped out of his skin in shock. He never thought the friend he was so proud of would have actually lied to him. Since Big Brother Ji doesn't want to see me, I'll leave first. Bailey Honghang's face turned sad and lonely as she turned to walk toward the doors. But in her heart, she secretly counted. 3, 2, 1. Wait. Ji Wenbin's voice rang out as he sighed helplessly. I know your situation was forced. When he had first found out about Bailey Honghang's lies, he was terribly angry. But then when he calmed down and thought about it, he felt that she really did have her own difficulties. Then as he listened to her words, his resentment melted away, leaving only worry and concern for Bailey Hongzhuang. He. Bailey Honghang smiled happily. I knew Big Brother Ji was highly principled, and could understand my plight. Ji Wenbin couldn't be as happy as Bailey Honghang. I heard you and Prince Chen would be married in a month's time. Is this the truth? It's true. Why did the emperor grant the marriage so abruptly? Because His Majesty was unhappy with me. Bailey Honghang smiled. She was unflattering in the emperor's eyes, so it was only reasonable to marry her off to Dibei Chen. So then, are you really willing to marry Dibei Chen? Other people might not know, but Ji Wenbin knew clearly that Bailey Honghang and Dibei Chen were both very familiar with each other. Before, he had seen Dibei Chen several times in Godly Doctor Square. Was it him who asked the emperor for the engagement? I think Dibei Chen isn't bad. Bailey Hongzhuang laughed lightly, at least, a lot more reliable than Xian Yuan Huan. Really decided? Even if Ji Wenbin decided to speak more useless words, what could he do? After all, this was the emperor who laid down the decree. But he still couldn't help but ask. He wanted to make sure Bailey Hongzhuang didn't regret her decision. Decided. Bailey Honghang's voice was quiet, but firm. Bailey Hongzhuang bought a large pile of herbs in 10,000 Medicine Lane. Since opening Godly Doctor Square, her business was thriving and she no longer had to calculate and confirm which herbs she needed to get. Watching Bailey Honghang buy so many herbs at once, Ji Wenbin was puzzled. Honghang, what are you doing with so many herbs? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, it's a secret, I have some stuff to do. Ji Wenbin couldn't help but laugh, dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang was intentionally acting mysterious, provoking his curiosity. He no longer continued to ask. Putting all the medicine into the heaven and earth bags, Bailey Hongzhuang left for Heavenly Jewel Pavilion. Heavenly Jewel Pavilion was the largest shop in the imperial city for all things cultivation. Its size was incomparable to others. This was a place only the rich could go. Heavenly Jewel Pavilion. It has anything and everything a cultivator seeks. Even if they didn't at the time, as long as you paid, they would certainly help you as soon as possible. This was the reason for Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's fame. Master, what do you want to buy? Little Black asked curiously. Today, his master was simply bleeding money. With that fist-sized sack of gold, she could have bought so much food and let them eat happily. Pill furnace. Her eyes gleamed brightly. Today, she came here to buy a pill furnace. Before, she lacked funds and could only wait. But now that she has the money, she can finally buy her pill furnace. Just by entering Heavenly Jewel Pavilion, Bailey Honghoung could understand how it was worthy of the people's praise. Just the layout alone was enough to make a person's eyes light up. Even in the night, Heavenly Jewel Pavilion was as bright as day. All the pills, precious herbs, and weapons were displayed with a price tag, sorted out by rank and level, letting its visitors find the items they needed as soon as possible. The waiters and waitresses were all handsome men and beautiful women with gentle, polite smiles, naturally making one happy. Noticing Bailey Honghoung, a waitress immediately came over and smiled, "Miss, what might you've come to buy here today?" "A pill furnace, do you have it?" She took a look around and had only seen pills, herbs, weapons, etc., but never once seen a pill furnace. Hearing Bailey Honghoung wanted to buy a pill furnace, a touch of surprise appeared in the waitress's eyes before they returned to their usual calmness. Although Heavenly Jewel Pavilion did indeed sell pill furnaces, the people who bought them were very little. After all, pill masters were just too rare. Even in the Imperial City, there were only a few. Was this surprisingly young girl in front of her a pill master? Pill furnaces are on the second floor. "Miss, please follow me." The waitress bowed and held out her hand, gesturing for Bailey Hongzhuang to follow her to the second floor. Bailey Honghoung nodded slightly. As long as she could buy the pill furnace, she was happy. But when Bailey Honghoung arrived at the second floor, she saw a familiar, hateful figure. Truly, enemies are on a narrow road. Bailey Yuyan was accompanying Du Hanyue to buy a pill furnace. Du Hanyue was an apprentice pill master. Although her own concoction skills were insufficient, pill master Yun Qingfeng's skills were very well known. The hunting feast was right around the corner. She and Bailey Haoshuan needed to show a good performance, so an appropriate pill was very important. Only after flattering Du Hanyue did she get him to promise to beg his master Yun Qingfeng to refine the siblings some pills. But this Du Hanyue was also ruthless, and even wanted them to buy him a pill furnace. This was an item expensive like no other, but under their current circumstances, the two siblings could only clench their teeth and bleed money. Seeing Bailey Honghoung appear, Bailey Yuyan's face turned disdainful. You actually dare to enter Heavenly Jewel Pavilion? You can enter, so why can't I enter?" Bailey Hongzhuang's words were sarcastic. Really, every time this girl sees her, she keeps on looking for trouble with her. Only now did Bailey Yuyan remember that Bailey Honghoung wasn't the same anymore. Just by opening Godly Doctor Square alone, her income was far higher than her own. Although she could eat and drink well in the general's household and the monthly allowance of silver coins were many, the expenses were also large, so the real amount of money in her hands are actually rather little. Too lazy to bother with Bailey Yuyan's nonsense, Bailey Honghoung directly walked to the pill furnace shelves. There were 10 pill furnaces arranged in front of her. With a glance, she could easily tell that the silver-colored pill furnace's quality was the best. The furnaces placed before her were something she normally wouldn't even glance at. But since she was currently only refining low-level immortality pills, it would just have to do. As her strength grows, in the future she'll definitely come back and buy a new pill furnace that catches her eye. "Bailey Yuyan, I want this pill furnace. Can you get it for me?" Du Hanyue asked, pointing at the silver pill furnace. She fancied that pill furnace for a long time now, but it was always too expensive and the money in her hands was never enough. But since Bailey Yuyan conveniently wanted to request something, she naturally wouldn't let the opportunity slip by. Seeing Du Hanyue choose the most expensive pill furnace, Bailey Yuyen's heart secretly turned gloomy, full of hatred and jealousy. She carefully looked at the price tag below it, 200,000 gold coins. The price was enough to scare her. Father knew that she had to please Du Hanyue and specially gave her 100,000 gold coins. Together with her lifetime savings, she had no more than 130,000 gold coins. She had thought that it was enough, but had never expected for Du Hanyue's appetite to be so big, wanting 200,000 gold coins. Bailey Yuyen's face turned difficult. Lady Du, 200,000 gold coins, 200,000 gold coins, she simply cannot bring out. Seeing Bailey Yuyen's expression, Du Hanyue's face turned irritated. If you don't want to, then forget it. Lady Du, it's not that I'm unwilling, Bailey Yuyen said hastily, but 200,000 coins is just too much. I don't have that many gold coins on me, could there be anything else you want? She had coaxed Du Hanyue to coming here with great difficulty. As long as she managed to please her, then her master Yun Qingfeng could refine she and her brother with some immortality pills. Bailey Yuyen had no other choice but to do this. Although Heavenly Jewel Palace did indeed sell immortality pills, they've long been snatched up, all in preparation for the royal hunting feast. If it wasn't for the Imperial City's pill masters being so rare, and the skilled pill masters being even rarer, then she wouldn't be doing everything here just to please Du Hanyue. I'm only interested in this one, I don't want any others. Du Hanyue's voice was slightly cold. You can't even afford to buy me this, but still want to ask for my master's help. Hearing this, Bailey Yuyen turned anxious. Lady Du, just wait a little. I'll think of some way to buy the furnace, is that all right? Du Hanyue nodded, satisfied, then I'll be waiting. Watching Bailey Yuyen and Du Hanyue, a touch of ridicule appeared in Bailey Honghang's eyes. She never expected to one day see Bailey Yuyen act subserviently. Miss, how much might you want to spend for the pill furnace? The waitress asked politely. Although she didn't know this girl's identity, just by looking at her clothing and demeanor, she could tell that she wasn't anyone ordinary and acted even more humble. Bailey Yuyen was just thinking about how to quickly get 70,000 gold coins when she heard what the waitress told Bailey Honghang, and she couldn't help but laugh. Huh, did I hear you right? You wanted to buy a pill furnace? What if I buy a pill furnace? You're not a pill master, what do you want to do with it? Use it as a stove and roast dinner on it? Bailey Yuyen laughed. Du Hanyue originally made her pretty unhappy, but seeing Bailey Honghang act so overconfident, her mood grew fantastic. But Bailey Honghang just glanced at her coldly, as if she was looking at an idiot. I want this pill furnace. Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at the silver pill furnace. Bailey Yuyen's smile instantly stiffened, the air around her turning angry. Bailey Honghang, are you provoking me? Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't a pill master and naturally didn't need to buy a pill furnace. In her view, Bailey Hongzhuang heard her discussion with Du Hanyue, and deliberately chose to buy a pill furnace after listening. And now, she even chose the pill furnace that Du Hanyue fancied. If this wasn't to provoke her, then what was? Du Hanyue also tensed. This was the pill furnace she had always longed for. Fortunately, very few people in the Imperial City bought pill furnaces, and the silver pill furnace has been sitting in Heavenly Jewel Pavilion for months untouched. But now, this girl wants to buy it. Bailey Hongzhuang lazily glanced at Bailey Yuyen, stressing every word slowly, you think too much. I'm telling you, I'm not interested in you at all. She didn't care about her, she wasn't even interested in provoking her. Bailey Yuyen. Du Hanyue shouted for her hastily. She can't let anyone else buy this pill furnace. Bailey Yuyen immediately understood and rushed to the waitress, we selected this pill furnace first, so you can't sell it to her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and lifted up her chin, looking at Bailey Yuyen, then buy it. When her voice fell, Bailey Yuyen's face froze. Right now, she didn't have enough money. Since you can't afford it, I should be able to buy it now. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to the waitress and asked her, am I right? The waitress's face was embarrassed as she glanced at Bailey Yuyan, but still nodded. Right. You can't buy it now. Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Bailey Hongzhuang drawled loudly. Can you wait a few moments for me to go back and withdraw some more money? Bailey Yuyan gritted her teeth. 200,000 gold coins were far more than she had expected, but this time, she absolutely could not let Bailey Hongzhuang buy the pill furnace. Miss can pay a mortgage of 100,000 gold coins, and if Miss doesn't come back, then the gold coins will not be returned, said the waitress. Bailey Yuyan's face turned green. She didn't even know if her father would give her 70,000 if she were to go back and ask. For the general's household as a whole, 200,000 gold coins wasn't at all a small figure. Plus, they still needed to pay Yun Qingfeng a commission fee. The cost is too high. Seeing Bailey Yuyan so hesitant, the waitress couldn't help but suggest, Miss, these two slightly cheaper furnaces are also very good. Try and consider it. Bailey Yuyan looked at Du Hanyue, who was still stubborn with her choice. That pill furnace was the only one she wanted. Help me wrap it up. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her hand. She didn't want to continue wasting time here. Judging by Bailey Yuyan's attitude, she couldn't afford it. The waitress took the pill furnace off the shelf, and Bailey Yuyan watched as it disappeared off the second floor. Her hands were clenched tight enough to bleed. Bailey Hongzhuang was once an existence that could be stepped under the sole of her foot. But now, she could prance high and mighty right in front of her. In Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's first floor, Bailey Hongzhuang happily paid 200,000 gold coins before stoving the furnace into her heaven and earth pouch. The waitress watched as the young Bailey Hongzhuang easily pulled out 200,000 gold coins. Although she didn't say anything, her eyes held a bit of marvel. Who was Bailey Yuyan? She was very clear. To be even able to ridicule the eldest miss of the general household, this girl wasn't simple. The waitress was rather new to the imperial city. If she had lived in the imperial city longer, then she would have known that the woman in front of her was godly Dr. Square's sole doctor, the general household's second miss, Bailey Hongzhuang. It's downright satisfying seeing that look on that damn woman, Bailey Yuyan's face. Little Black's face was filled with hard-to-conceal excitement. Watching this, I don't even feel the need to eat anymore. You said it yourself, no need for you to eat tonight then. Bailey Hongzhuang laughed. Little Black's face broke down. Master, am I not happy for you? How could you have the heart to do this to me? Little White smiled wisely. Naturally, if you sin, you won't get rewarded. Since I can't eat, do you really think you still can? Little Black said threateningly. Little White was stunned, quickly supporting, Master, Little Black's words were for your happiness, you can't take his food. Listening as the duo bombarded her as they chattered incessantly for food, Bailey Hongzhuang laughed quietly, okay, today you two will definitely get a big dinner tonight. Long live Master. When Bailey Hongzhuang came back to Jingli Garden, Bei Chen was still sitting on the table. When he saw her come back, his handsome face revealed a smile. It looks like you're very busy today, only coming back now. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, naturally. I'm not like you, who has nothing to do. Bei Chen wasn't offended. Have you eaten dinner? I'll ask the chefs to prepare something. I'll try the skills of a master chef's. Bei Chen clapped his hands and a servant instantly started to serve the food and wine. Looking at the table full of rich wine and plentiful foods, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt like her head was a little wet. She looked up. Could it be raining? The bright moon still hung in the sky, without the slightest sign of rain. With a start, she suddenly realized it was the two fluffballs' drool. Master, so much yummy food. Little Black exclaimed. The light in Bailey Hongzhuang's pupils suddenly sank, a threatening tone appearing in her voice. If you two dare to drool on my head, do you believe that I'll let you spend the next few days hungry? The fluff balls were at first startled, but then quickly covered their mouths, no longer daring to let a drop of drool spill out. Bei Chen watched as Bailey Hongzhuang's expressions changed constantly, a touch of surprise emerging in his ocean-like pupils. What are you doing? Nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang responded, I just thought this chef's food is good. Her belly full of food and liquor, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, satisfied. Since coming here, this was the first time she ate such delicious food and wine. Nothing needed to be said about the general's household's meals, and she rarely went to restaurants. Even when she did, the restaurant couldn't be compared to today's feast. It's late, have an early rest. Bei Chen's smile was warm with alcohol as he got up, preparing to leave Jingli Garden and return to his palace. Wait a moment. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly shouted at Bei Chen. Bei Chen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, confused, what? Tonight, sleep here at Jingli Garden. Hearing her words, He Mu couldn't help but choke. He never expected for Bailey Hongzhuang to actually be so aggressive. Although Little Lord and Bailey Hongzhuang were getting married in less than a month, in the end, they still aren't married yet. Bei Chen played bashful, wifey, if you're so forward, your hubby will be embarrassed. But if wifey wishes so, then I'm willing. Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth twitched. This guy's face keeps on changing, she didn't even finish her words, and he already thought so far. You think too much. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly, I didn't mean anything else. Bei Chen's lips hooked up into an understanding smile, I know wifey didn't mean anything else. Only that meaning, I understand. The words he spoke were very ambiguous. What do you understand? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her voice, I'm just trying to help cure your legs. Hearing her words, waves appeared in Bei Chen's ocean-like eyes before they quickly returned to their previous teasing appearance. Actually, now I think that staying here to chat about what's uncooked is actually a pretty good idea. TL note, uncooked is referring to making Hongzhuang cooked, aka pregnant. If you don't want to be cured, then forget it. No, if wifey can help her hubby, it's naturally the best. Bei Chen added hastily. He smiled innocently, his whole face like a blooming flower. It was an indescribably bewitching scene. He Mu sighed with relief, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't that aggressive after all. But when he heard that Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to cure his little lord's leg disease, his heart couldn't help but pound with excitement. His little lord's legs had already been crippled for 3 whole years. Many people had already lost hope in his lord, but he had always believed that one day, his little lord would be able to stand up on his own 2 feet. Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned serious as she began to treat Bei Chen. Carefully confirming the degree of paralysis in Bei Chen's legs, Bailey Hongzhuang asked, can you feel the paralysis developing upwards in your body? Bei Chen nodded slightly, there's some. Looking at his placid, handsome face, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but admire. This guy was only a teenager. Continuing to fight in the face of complete paralysis rather than giving up, and continuing to maintain such elegance, it simply wasn't something a normal person could do. Just by this feature, she knew Bei Chen's heart was firm. Wife, do you really know what I have? Bei Chen inquired. It wasn't that he didn't believe Bailey Hongzhuang, but he had already visited many doctors, and not one has ever even heard of his illness. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrow, would I lie to you? Since Bei Chen protected her from Bailey Hongzhuang, not allowing even a drop to spill on her, her heart was already set on helping him. When she was lonely, there was only Bei Chen who reached out to her. Lady Bailey, in the end, what happened to my lord? He was poisoned, right? He Mu couldn't help but ask. He really wanted to know how his awe-inspiring lord's legs suddenly became crippled and fell down from the altar. If it was purposefully done, he won't let him off. You've investigated for so long, but you still haven't found anything, right? He Mu nodded, embarrassed. He had always been ashamed of this. Well, there's no need to look any longer. This isn't due to poisoning. Feng Bo's godly doctor said that as well, but also didn't know what it was. Di Bei Chen's face still had a smile. Even though he was talking about such a serious problem, his appearance was as carefree as ever. This is because of your physique. Bailey Hongzhuang explained, it's good that the godly doctor was vigilant and could slow down the paralysis. Otherwise, it would have been incurable. Physique? Di Bei Chen pondered. Although he had thought of many possibilities, he never thought it'd be due to this. A physique complication was just too rare. Everybody knew about physiques, and his own constitution wasn't very special. Have you heard about the cursed physique? Bailey Hongzhuang asked as she took Di Bei Chen's pulse. Out of all the physiques I know, I've never heard of a cursed physique. He knew almost all of the continent's rare physiques, but still, has never heard of such a constitution. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't surprised. The cursed physique is incredibly rare, so it's only natural you've never heard of it. Your cultivation speed used to be very fast, far surpassing an ordinary cultivator's. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled quietly, then your body began to grow paralyzed, starting from your toes and spreading outwards little by little. Now, your cultivation speed is also beginning to slow down. The expression in Di Bei Chen's eyes constantly changed, his heart pounding with shock. He had never told anyone about his cultivation slowing down. Even Feng Bo's godly doctor didn't know. Bailey Hongzhuang was sure of everything as soon as she took his pulse. Could his body really be a cursed physique? He Mu was shocked. Lady Bailey was indeed godly. Her reputation of a godly doctor was truly well deserved. Can you change my physique? A surge of darkness swirled under the brightness in Di Bei Chen's eyes. Even though his anxiety was well hidden, Bailey Hongzhuang still caught it. The smile on her lips grew softer. Of course I can. When the words burst out, Di Bei Chen's deep, ocean-like eyes seemed to bloom with boundless splendor. After 3 years, there was finally hope. With her gentle smile, the tension in his ice-cold heart seemed to melt away. However, the process is very difficult. Enduring it won't be easy. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was low and serious. If you can't persevere, then you'll die. If you cannot stand the pain, then it'd be better to just live your life suppressed and crippled. Otherwise, if you were to give up in the middle of changing your physique, it'd be the real fall. Di Bei Chen was calm. He didn't bat an eyelid even when speaking of death, the firm look in his eyes never wavering. Wife, don't worry. This little pain won't beat your husband. Di Bei Chen's voice was low and deep. Although his face was still the same one she had always teased, the look in his eyes was serious. The depths of his eyes reflected Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the determination in those 2 eyes. Now that you've chosen, I'll help you to the end. By helping me change my constitution, how would you be impacted? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Nothing, just more work. Hearing her words, although Bailey Hongzhuang said it was simple, Di Bei Chen knew it couldn't only be that. Since the process to change his physique was so difficult that he may even die, then Bailey Hongzhuang would also have to work extraordinarily hard. Bailey Hongzhuang took out her bag of needles from the heaven-earth pouch. Before she can change his constitution, the paralysis in the legs must be treated first. Words spoken, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared for Di Bei Chen's acupuncture when suddenly, he grabbed her hand that was about to start. Raising her head a little, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Bei Chen quizzically. She didn't know why he had just clutched her hand. Bei Chen carefully inspected that beautiful and exquisite face, his deep voice slightly hoarse as he asked, "Why are you helping me?" "Why?" "They've only known each other for a short time. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even know who he was, so why was she helping him?" Staring into those eyes that were as deep as the sea, a little smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. "When you helped me, did you have a reason?" "That's different." Bei Chen raised his voice a little, "Aren't you worried that I'll betray you after you cure my legs?" The things he did were just little things anybody would do, but what Bailey Hongzhuang's doing is far beyond that. "Is that important?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked back. Bei Chen was stunned, never expecting for her to give such an answer. "How isn't this important? When you asked me this, I knew you didn't help me for anything but to help me." The smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face grew even gentler. "Besides, even if you were to act against me because of this, I wouldn't care. The decisions she chose, she has never regretted." Although she didn't know Bei Chen's true identity, although she didn't know why Bei Chen was trying to get close to her, she still believed that Bei Chen's actions were sincere. Why? Maybe it was because for once, there was someone standing in front of her. Maybe because it was the first time somebody could understand her sadness. Maybe it was because her heart was beating for him. Because of this, it was enough. Bei Chen suddenly found there was no way to see through Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though he could never understand how her medicinal skills were developed, from the time they've spent together, he had felt Bailey Hongzhuang was very simple. But at this moment, it was like he suddenly didn't know her anymore. How could the problems others cared about so much, in her eyes, be seen with such unimportance? "Why, don't you care?" "Because you helped me, didn't you?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If before she was suspicious of Bei Chen, now she felt that he was truly a good person. Even though he was usually complicated and wise, his thoughts were clear and simple, and actually, he was very kind. Gazing at the sweet, smiling face before him, for the first time, Bei Chen thought this world was truly complicated. "If there isn't a problem, can I start?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow as she asked, "First, I have to deal with the paralysis in your legs. Changing your physique will need some rare ingredients. But trust that after the physique is changed, your cultivation speed and talent will increase by leaps and bounds. Don't worry." Bei Chen nodded. He knew Bailey Hongzhuang was comforting him. Silver needles were inserted into the acupuncture points in his leg. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were careful. Each time, the needles were swift and accurate. As early as when Bailey Hongzhuang and Bei Chen's conversation started, He Mu had already retreated to the sidelines. If he were to remain there, he'd be nothing but an eyesore. It was better to leave Lady Bailey and his little lord alone so they could get along better. The peach blossom forest was quiet and peaceful, leaving only the silhouettes of a slender, white-robed figure and a tall, pale, golden-robed figure. The woman sat on the man's legs as he gazed at her. The peach blossoms blew, fragrant. Their silhouettes were hazy, creating a dream-like scene. Once all the needles were accurately inserted into the acupuncture points, Bailey Hongzhuang spoke up, "The next part is going to be painful. If you can't hold on, don't be afraid to yell." Bei Chen nodded slightly, "I'll be okay. Let's start." Hearing his words, Bailey Hongzhuang's inner chi burst out. Her right hand waved a silver needle, causing all the acupuncture needles began to tremble. Bei Chen could feel a numb tingle spreading through his legs as if countless insects were climbing it, the itchiness almost unbearable. However, a trace of joy appeared in his dark eyes. For 3 years, there was never any feeling in his legs, but now, he could sense something. The itchiness gradually turned into pain, like a million needles were stabbing his legs all at once. It was one of the most painful things anyone could experience. Bei Chen endured the ferocious pain in his legs. On the surface, his expression was very normal without a single sign of pain. Only the big beads of sweat that emerged on his forehead and his slightly wrinkled brow, could a person have a hint of the pain he felt. Watching Bei Chen, a thread of admiration appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Bei Chen's mind was truly strong. This pain that ordinary men simply couldn't withstand, he was able to face without even a change in his expression. As Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bei Chen also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Droplets of sweat were emerging from Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead, her exquisite face pale. This treatment was very strenuous for her as well. Bei Chen's heart was a little touched. Everywhere, there was only people with their own interests as the most important. Nobody would help somebody else without a reason. Living in such an environment for so long, perhaps even he became the same. It was because of this, that as he watched Bailey Hongzhuang, his heart was touched. Time went by, and the pain intensified. Bei Chen's brows grew tighter and tighter. "If you scream, I won't laugh at you," Bailey Hongzhuang said. A sliver of a smile appeared on Bei Chen's face. She had no idea how much pain he had suffered. Although it was uncomfortable, it wasn't beyond his limits. Compared to before, this was nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang eyed Bei Chen's legs, veins faintly popping up from under his knee. As long as those veins could reach the soles of his feet, then the paralysis in his legs would be cured. "Master, your cultivation isn't strong enough to keep this up." Little Black was worried. Acupuncture not only consumed mental strength, but also inner qi. Bailey Hongzhuang was only at mysterious Earth Realm's late stage. Her strength was insufficient. "I understand that." Bailey Hongzhuang's face was pale. From the start, she never intended to completely cure Bei Chen today. Just hold on for one more minute, and the treatment's time can be shortened even more. Bei Chen also saw how pale Bailey Hongzhuang's face was and suddenly pulled her. "You already can't persevere, let us stop here." Looking at his handsome face filled with anxiousness, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and didn't insist. The silver needles returned to its case. "Then come here every day. In 7 days' time, your legs should be completely cured." "Okay. I'll be going to rest now." Bailey Hongzhuang turned around, but the consumption really wasn't small. Although she knew how to treat him, her cultivation was far lesser than before, so the burden was much larger. Bei Chen's right hand tugged, and Bailey Hongzhuang fell straight onto his chest. "What are you doing?" Bailey Hongzhuang was startled. "I'll bring you back to the house." "No, I'm not that weak. Don't move. I'll carry you back to the house." Bei Chen's voice was firm without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up. His deep, ocean-like eyes were sincere and worried. She sighed a little and no longer tried to refuse. When Bei Chen left, the two fluffballs jumped on the bed, their faces puzzled. "Master, why did you want to help Bei Chen?" Little Black's face revealed confusion. It wasn't like Master's temperament to have the losing side of the deal. There's things that just don't have a true answer to them. Bailey Hongzhuang said quietly. Bei Chen was a deep, unknown mystery, and she knew with certainty that there were many secrets undiscovered regarding him. It was also quite likely that he had a large power behind him. From the view of others, those with power had a limitless view. But she knew the sorrows that came with power. They could never speak with feelings. If they didn't have enough strength, then they'd only be trampled underfoot by others. Going from a peerless genius into a cripple, one could only imagine the torment he felt inside. She had already spent some time thinking about him. There wasn't any real harm to her, even though this wasn't following her way of life. This time she was willing to make an exception. The next few days, Di Bei Chen stopped by Jingli Garden every day for Bailey Honghoung's acupuncture. The paralysis in his legs lessened little by little. He only needed to wait until the 7th day before he could stand up again. On this day, Bailey Honghoung took out Qin Yayin's diary. This was where Qin Yayin wrote out her feelings. She also wanted to know what were Qin Yayin's thoughts. In the expanses of letters, Bailey Honghoung could clearly see the love in her heart Qin Yayin had for Bailey Jintao. She believed that after she married and became a general's wife, her life would be content. She never imagined that she'd be thrust into an abyss. From the beginning, the text was filled with anticipation and longing before falling into a terrible, lonely end. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed quietly. Her mother had loved the wrong man from the start. Turning to the last page in the booklet, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly found that 2 pages were stuck together. She could clearly see that words were written inside. Why would she take all the trouble to glue the last 2 pages together? Only after carefully prying the 2 pages apart while keeping them intact, could Bailey Hongzhuang see the text written inside. With just a glance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Her heart constantly jumped in surprise as she read through the paper. Even when she finished, her heart couldn't calm down for a very long time. Because it stated, she was actually not Qin Yayin's daughter. At first, in order to compete for Bailey Jintao's love, Qin Yayin lied that she was pregnant. Although Bailey Jintao had no doubts about it, Su Wanjing was very dissatisfied. The next day, Bailey Jintao didn't see Qin Yayin, who claimed that she was going to give birth. Originally, Qin Yayin made plans with a woman who was pregnant. The baby would be brought to her as soon as it was born. But when the birth family found that the baby was a boy, they were unwilling to give their child to the maid, letting Qin Yayin fall into a pit. Just as Qin Yayin was panicking, not knowing what to do, the maid suddenly found a baby just outside the gates. This baby was Bailey Honghoung. So it turns out, I'm not Qin Yayin's and Bailey Jintao's child. Bailey Honghoung was shocked. But after thinking it through, she was actually very content. Bailey Jintao was never a man she wanted as a father. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang knew there weren't any blood ties, she could breathe a sigh of relief. Only, who are my biological parents? Why did they leave me at the general household's gates? Bailey Honghoung frowned a little. According to Qin Yayin's description, her body was covered with blood at the time she was found, which meant her parents must have been forced to leave her there. So what exactly happened with her parents? Were they even still alive? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.